I gave that up
Did you?
to the point where I could store my business files or I could store that kind of shit in my vault. The decision was pretty easy.
Yeah,
you go.
yeah. I
I
would go
took an
with it.
entire truckload of that over to Jim's office. At some point, I said, I bet my files are better than yours. There you go.
That's gotta be a true story.
I have a present for you.
Yep, 1985 forward.
The kids are never gonna find another notebook again.
I know the binder.
No kidding.
These are good ones.
You know, they're not
Yeah,
teaching
and the
cursive.
In the
in school
dividers.
for kids?
Yeah.
Not teaching cursive? What is that? Like, how do you have a signature?
Yeah, DocuSign,
I give that.
DocuSign.
DocuSign.
No, you just do what Al does. It's big.
Listen, my signature qualifies, satisfies all the criteria of the signature. Cannot be reproduced, the most important one. Many people have tried. Doesn't work.
Now, my daughter told me when she was in high school, that the best way to copy a signature on a note that has to go back to the school, take mom's paper and turn it upside down. Now it's an art project. Okay, thanks, Odd. We are coming up on the witching hour. Got a little bit of time yet.
So call it a witching hour, not a bitching hour? I thought it was a bitching.
How are you,
hour.
Maggie?
Yes, respecting the other
He's kinda
guys.
scary. Just look at him.
Compliment in there somewhere, I think.
Yeah, it was. Actually.
Is that vodka in there, Emily?
You get through the meeting your way.
Don't be judgy.
Oh.
Good time to go already? That's great.
Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
Just had a February meeting. Seemed quick.
Is that the fire alarm?
Microwave's done.
Popcorn's ready.
Popcorn's ready.
There you go.
I'm not gonna pretend I know what that sound is.
Okay,
7 o'clock.
is everybody ready?
Good to go.
Oh, no signal. Oh, yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
I have 7 o'clock on my Verizon phone. Welcome, everybody, to the March 1st meeting, 2023. I'd like to start with a salute to the flag and a moment of silence. Actually, a moment of silence, then a salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
It was on the news this morning, March 1st, 2020, first reported COVID case in Rhode Island was reported.
Wow.
3 years ago to the day, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
3 years ago.
and then 2 weeks later, shit hit the fan. Yeah.
Yep, it did. That's when all the toilet paper disappeared.
Yes. Well, that's because of what he said. Hit the fan. and- Okay.
I still remember policemen at Walmart guarding the toilet paper. The honest guy had a police detail.
Really?
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call. Ron Prelwitz here.
Keith Lindelof here.
Carolyn Light here.
Emily Shamshiniya here.
Al Diorio here.
Wales here. Okay, thank you. Tree roll for April 5th, 2023. Ron Prelwitz, I plan to be here.
Keith Lindelof planned to be here.
Carolyn Light, yes.
Emily Shamshiniya, yes.
Al Diorio, yes.
Lisa Wales, yes.
Okay, thank you. Approval of the minutes for the February 1st, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I will move that we approve the February 1st, 2023, regular meeting minutes.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Hurlwitz, yes.
Vandella, yes.
light, yes.
Shamshini, yes.
Iorio, yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes. Now, I've checked with the attorneys and the other people that have a concern with this. We're going to reshuffle the deck just a little bit. We have a couple of little items that need to be done, and then a couple of very long controversial items. We're going to put these to bed, so these other folks don't have to sit here till 3 or 4 in the morning.
Ron, can I just make one? So even I've contacted Jeff about the screens. That's what I've been hurriedly doing over here. But I just checked, it is streaming to YouTube. So just because those aren't on doesn't mean that that's not happening. I hear you all talking. That's all okay.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to double check that before we got too far into the meeting.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
let's deal with your issue first.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
we need a motion to modify the sequence of the agenda.
oh, okay. We have a motion to modify the sequence.
Can I assume that this new sequence will be new business first and then old business?
Yes,
Okay. I will make a motion that we modify the agenda to place new business, the 3 items under new business in order first, followed by the 3 items under old business.
thank you. We have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Hurlwitz, yes.
Vandella, yes.
Light, yes.
Shamshini, yes.
Iorio, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Williams,
Yes.
let's go over your subdivision plans.
Please approach the podium and state your name for the record. Thank you.
Before we get started, Mr. Chairman, on this particular application, I've issued a notice of recusal. Natalia, my firm is involved with surveying and mapping for this project. So we step away.
Okay, thank you. Usually you're up. You can stay there if you like. Okay. Do this file here a little bit. Here it is. Okay. Mr. Williams,
Yes, sir.
your comments?
I don't have any, I don't think. You guys have questions, I gladly answer them.
If you could just give the board a brief overview of what your proposal
Okay.
is, that would be helpful.
So we have a property now that has a single-family house on it, and it accompanies about 5 acres or so, a little over 5, I believe. And we'd like to divide it up, make a 2-acre lot so we can sell that house, and the rest of the property will be given to my son to build a house.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Diorio did the surveying and prepared the documents.
Correct.
Okay,
We have all the ISDS approvals for both lots already, so. For the current home has a cesspool, so to sell it, we have to put in a septic system. We have that design approved, and the proposed house design is also approved.
okay. Hogan, any comments?
Is that on? Yep. Oh, yes, I just have 2 quick questions for you. Mr.
Sure.
Williams, from reviewing the packet and the tax card online, it would appear that the title of the property is in a trust. Is that correct? Helen, I don't know how you pronounce the last name, pardon me, Helen
Soretsky,
Sarvetsky.
yeah, that was my wife's aunt, and when she passed last year, it was left to my wife and my sister-in-law.
So we just need to clarify for purposes of the decision, the actual title owner of the property, because it's still assessed in the name of the Helen Saretsky Irrevocable Trust.
Okay,
Okay, so we'll just need to clarify that for when we do the final decision. And then something Al, I think, can probably help you with, maybe Talia can, but on the documents I reviewed, it was the OWTS approval for the repair to the existing dwelling. The number of that OWTS permit was illegible on the copies. So we just need to get that number.
Okay, Al must have that somewhere.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Okay, now my question to Attorney Hogan, can we proceed with this or do they have to come back to those documents or whatever?
Those are just administrative matters. You can proceed.
Okay. To our planner, comments, questions?
I don't have any.
Okay. I would say we could we grant them. Do we-
Is there a draft motion here?
The solicitor prepared a motion for you and I can give all of you copies.
Got it.
Did everybody get a copy?
Yeah, I passed.
Thank you. So, so item number one, the owner of the subject property is the item that I was just addressing. So you could actually skip over that and just indicate that that particular item will be ascertained post-hearing as far as who's the actual title owner of the property.
Thank you.
And same for number five, that permit number could be filled in afterwards. But other than that, I think you'll find it's complete, but of course it's subject to any additional conditions that the board might have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion?
So since this is a minor subdivision, a lot of it is really routine. So we have this motion that includes some findings of fact from the packet and application submitted by the applicant, as well as the conclusions of law that we have to essentially come to in order to advance this project. So I'm going to read this draft motion, but then I think we should pause after I read it just to see if there's any discussion on any of the topics, see if any of the things on here click anything in anyone's mind and we want to talk. But then we could also maybe not talk and just approve it and just see how it goes. Okay.
Well said.
Thank you.
Okay, so I move to approve the Helen L. Saretsky Irrevocable Trust application for preliminary plan for a minor subdivision located at 3 Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road, AP 22, lot 53, for a total of 2 lots based on the following findings of fact and conclusions of law. So findings of fact, the Helen L. Saretsky Irrevocable Trust is the owner of the subject property by deed recorded in book 558, page 649. The details around this ownership and any trustees related to the trust will be sorted out administratively following this meeting. 2, the subject property is located in the RFR 80 zone and has an area of approximately 5.2 acres. The property currently contains 1 single-family dwelling. The parcel has 281.88 feet of frontage on Crandall Lane and 408.93 feet of frontage on Old Hopkinton Cemetery Lane. The proposal is for 2 lots, each exceeding minimum dimensional requirements for frontage and acreage. Lot 1 shall contain 80,761 square feet and shall have frontage on Crandall Lane. Lot number 1 has an existing dwelling located thereon. Lot number 2 shall contain 146,020 square feet and shall front on Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road. On August 22nd, 2022, the Hopkinton Building and Zoning Department issued a letter indicating that utilizing frontage on Crandall Lane is permissible for the proposed lot subdivision.
Should be 2
Oh,
lots.
2 lot subdivisions, sorry.
Total lot.
Tried to read that on the fly.
Yep.
On November 15th, 2022, the Rhode Island DEM issued an on-site wastewater treatment system permit. The number will be determined after this meeting and handled administratively. For a repair to the septic system servicing the existing single-family dwelling. On December 7th, 2022, the Rhode Island DEM issued a 3-bedroom OWTS permit number 2214-1163 for the proposed second lot. On December 14th, 2022, Joe Klinger, Principal Environmental Scientist from Ecotones Incorporated, issued a letter indicating that no wetlands were observed on the site and that the closest wetlands appeared to be 300 feet or more from the site. He also described the parcel as a mix of predominantly evergreen forest and developed residential land. He further opined that there were no jurisdictional wetlands or resulting required buffers. On December 15th, 2022, Anthony Nenna from Onsite Engineering Incorporated discussed the anticipated traffic impact from the proposed subdivision. In referencing standards set forth on the Institute of Traffic Engineers ITE Trip Generation Manual 11th edition, he stated that the traffic volume is minimal and will not have any impact on daily traffic associated with Old Hopkinton Cemetery Road. Conclusions of law. 1, the proposed development is consistent with the comprehensive community plan and/or has satisfactorily addressed the issues where there may be inconsistencies. 2, the proposed development complies with the Hopkinton zoning ordinance. 3, there will be no significant negative environmental impacts from the proposed development as shown on the final plan with all required conditions for approval. The subdivision as proposed will not result in the creation of individual lots with such physical constraints to development that building on those lots according to pertinent regulations and building standards would be impractical because lands unsuitable for development are excluded from development. 5, all proposed land developments and all subdivision lots shall have adequate and permanent physical access to a public street. 6, the proposed development provides for safe circulation of pedestrian and vehicular traffic, for surface water runoff control, for suitable building sites, and for preservation of natural, historical, and cultural features that contribute to the attractiveness of the community with required conditions of approval. 7, the design and location of streets, building lots, utilities, drainage improvements, and other improvements in the proposed development minimizes flooding and soil erosion with required conditions of approval. So maybe I'll pause there and see if anybody wants to discuss anything, and then I'll read the order and we can vote on it.
I agree.
No questions or comments here?
Nothing here.
I'm good. Cecil,
You're good? Okay.
thank you.
Great. So to continue my motion, I'll now add an order. The proposed preliminary plan for Helen L. Saretsky Irrevocable Trust Plan entitled Saretsky Williams Minor Subdivision is approved together with the following conditions of approval. A, the requirements set forth in the Rhode Island DEM's permit referenced above are incorporated herein. And B, the stormwater management narrative set forth on sheet 3 of 4 of the plans are incorporated herein.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Prowitz, yes.
Lindell, yes.
Light, yes.
Shamshini, yes.
Wales, yes.
Very good. Thank you, everyone.
All set?
Mr. Williams, you are all set. Just
Thank you.
contact Kaya with the
Thank you. Yes.
documentation later on.
No, no, no. You're good.
Gloria will get seated. Okay, you're welcome. We have an administrative request for conditionally combined stages of review, 6-lot cluster subdivision, SNL Family Properties, Fairview Residential Cluster. AP 28, lots 113, 113B, 0 Fairview Avenue, and 43 Fairview Avenue. David Johnson, Russia, did I pronounce that correctly? Cove Investments, LLC, Family Properties, LLC applicants.
Mr. Johnston is here via Zoom. I've made him a panelist. Should be appearing shortly.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank
Oh,
you.
excellent. Thank you. And thank you for taking this via Zoom. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I can start or?
Just state your name for the record, Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry. David Johnston, attorney for Brushneck Cove Investments and SNL Family Properties.
Okay, thank you. Can you give us an overview of your proposal?
Yeah, so this is a cluster subdivision. It's 2 parcels. It's plat 28 lots 113 and 113B. That's the existing home at 46 Fairview Avenue in the acreage in the back. We're proposing creating 4 buildable lots in addition to the 1 single family that's there for a total of 5 lots. I believe the 6th lot on the application references an administrative subdivision that will be subject to this approval with lot 114. Lot 114 currently has a very small encroachment and uses some of the driveway on lot 113 at the access point on Fairview Avenue. So as part of this overall process, we're seeking to basically rectify that encroachment by doing an administrative subdivision with the owner of lot 114, who is in agreement to do so. About a year ago, a little over a year ago, my initial conversations with Jim Lanfear, the planner at the time, was that this was going to go forward as a minor. So therefore, and based on those conversations, we moved this from a standard subdivision into a cluster. And therefore, we appeared twice, I believe it was in May and June of last year, for pre-application meetings. After those we didn't do master plan because we had it as a minor at the time. After that time, we applied for wetlands with TEM as well as RIPDs. Both of those permits came in recently, January. And so at this point, we're ready to move forward. The interpretation has changed, and that's fine from a minor to a major. However, we are ready. The master plan application is delivered and is pending certification of approval. We've done the legwork, and we're ready also to handle the preliminary plan checklist. So we're asking that, really based upon the change interpretation and the work that we've done, we'd like to be able to combine them. That way we can bring everything we have before the board at the next meeting. Again, assuming both applications are accepted and as complete, certified as complete.
Okay, thank you. Talia, comments?
Sure. This is a similar kind of administrative action as you had taken with Mr. Scalise's application, where he requested to have the master and preliminary combined. So ultimately, what the board is voting on is a conditional approval to combine. Ultimately, the combination is going to be based upon my certification of both the master plan and the preliminary plan is complete. But this would just allow the applicant to submit both of those and continue on their way in a more expeditious manner than if they were to just come with the master and then wait a little while and then come with the preliminary. So that's the background on this.
Thank you. Board members?
Question.
Thoughts, comments, questions?
Question. So, Talia, master plan and preliminary. I'm perfectly okay with combining the stages. My query is, since the master plan is still a form of concept, what happens if we decide to make or recommend changes to the master plan, but the applicant has already cemented the thinking at the preliminary?
I would say that I would ask our solicitor for advice in dealing with such a question.
I'd like to think that it wouldn't come up, but I suppose it is a possibility.
It does remain a possibility, and by combining, what you're saying is that the review is that both checklists have been satisfied. So for submission criteria, if the board were to find, as they're reviewing this, that they're uncomfortable with the master plan, you have the ability, you haven't given anything up, you have the ability to have your discussions and ask for changes and have them resubmit the master and the preliminary plans.
Outstanding, thank you. As long as the applicant understands that those are the conditions upon moving forward, I'm perfectly okay.
Yes, we understand. Thank you.
That was my question too. So great.
Works for me.
Okay. So
Anything?
anything? you wanna go with?
We're good?
Good? Good. So I'll make a motion that we conditionally approve the request to combine both the master and preliminary plans and stages of review. Once our planner certifies both plans as complete.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Krelwitz, yes.
Linda Lowe, yes.
Light, yes.
Jim Sheenia, yes.
Fury, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Next order of business. Let's look at that here. Sanctuary Garden Cemetery. Pre-application is AP2, Lot 32, 201 Chase Hill Road. There's the applicant here. Thank you.
The applicant is not here. I think in person, maybe in the queue on the Zoom meeting, along with Attorney Kelly Fracassa. Mr. Fracassa is recovering from a bit of surgery, so he's not too mobile right now.
All righty.
And there he is.
I've made Mr. Fracassa a panelist. I do not see the name of the applicant in the attendees, but I'm sure that you and Mr. Fracassa can give an adequate explanation of what's being proposed here.
Absolutely.
Oh, Kelly, I'm gonna ask you to unmute first,
Oh,
and
That
then
might
just state
help.
your name for the record.
Kelly Fracassa, and I'm the attorney for Mohammed Kandil, who is the applicant here. This property is Plat 2, Lot 32. It's in an RFR 80 zone. The property is quite large. It's got a little over 23 acres and over 500 feet of frontage. And Mr. Kandil's standing to seek review tonight, or seek review period, is that he entered into a purchase and sale agreement to buy this property. And the address of it is 201 Chase Hill Road. And what he's looking to do is develop it into a cemetery. Cemetery is permitted in this zone by a special use permit. So under the usual procedure, if this board ends up approving master plan down the road, then we're going to have to take a trip to the zoning board, get a special use permit, and then come back to this board for preliminary final plan approval. This is a major plan development, at least that's my understanding. And we're also here for development plan review. I'm probably making this request. It's probably premature to do so, but at some point we're going to request that the land development review be combined with development plan review. But right now we're just here for the pre-app, and Brian Thalman is the engineer. And Brian?
Thanks, Kelly. As Kelly has so eloquently stated, we're here with a proposed cemetery for the property located at 201 Chase Hill Road. As is outlined in the subdivision regulations, this is just kind of an information sharing type of discussion. What we wanted to glean from this discussion is immediately, are there any reservations or concerns members of the board may have? And then with our gearing up to come to the master plan submission next, are there reports or testimony that would aid the board in that decision? And then as part of that, do we need to request both master plan approval and a recommendation be combined? Or is that something we can do through the application process? I do not expect we would be here in April, but if we need to put in the request in a written form to combine both master plan and an advisory opinion to the zoning board for the special use permit, we would like the opportunity to take care of that.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Hogan.
I have one question for Mr. Fracassa. Kelly, at present, there's a residence on the property, is that correct?
I believe there is, yes.
So the intention is not to have two uses on the property, is it?
That is correct.
You're intending to have two uses on the on the property?
No,
No, we do not intend to have two uses on the
Okay,
property.
thanks. You're going to convert the single family to something else?
Yes, I can't
Down.
remember what it's being converted to, but it's going to be in connection with the cemetery use.
it will function as the office.
Great, thanks. That was the legal question that I had that I wanted to have answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board members, questions, comments, concerns?
Oh, it's relative to this, but do we need any more cemeteries in this area? Do we have enough? Is there a shortage? I don't know.
Well, people are gonna keep dying for a long
Yeah,
time.
I guess. yeah.
Well, to that point, in a point that came out earlier in the meeting and the discussion is, for the last 3 years, we've all lived through a pandemic, and there was a significant uptick in deaths that have occurred. I can tell you from a personal level, the Preet Engineering, our offices in Cranston are immediately adjacent to a casket supply company. And for the better part of 15 months, it was not unusual to see 7 or 8 tractor trailer trucks queued up to unload caskets every morning. The Ashway Garden Cemetery Group owns other facilities throughout Rhode Island, and it is a finite quantity that cemeteries have. Once a plot is occupied, it's occupied in perpetuity. So they foresee a need developing, and it's one of the reasons that they are contemplating doing this in kind of a phased approach, is that it would not be an immediate clear cut of the parcel, that this would be done in stages. But there is a need, and the pandemic has kind of emphasized that.
Just to throw my 2 cents worth in here. The cemetery that's on the corner of Chase Hill Road and.
Yep. I think it's immediately west of our
There's
parcel.
not a lot of open real estate there anymore. The one that's down by the Girl Scout house, or Boy Scout, one of the Scout houses, whatever it is, down by Dunkin' Donuts and Main Street Pizza. There's some room there, but there's not a lot. My point being that they're gonna fill up.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yep.
Just food for thought.
And I when you read through the comprehensive plan of the town of Hopkinton, you people take the rural nature of this community very seriously. It's, you read through your gateway community to the state. You have a rural character, and having grown up in Smithfield, I truly appreciate that. And I think that these applicants have kept that vision in mind as they've kind of outlaid what their plans are for the future. Most notably is, if you kind of look at the final sheet, all the cemetery activity is at least 400 to 500 feet off of Chase Hill Road. So it's an opportunity to preserve that rural character that is consistent throughout the community.
Okay, thank you.
Couple of other thoughts, Mr. Chairman. So toward that end, there'll be some significant clearing on the site.
Yes.
Is there any, so enlighten me about the view from the road and or view from adjacent properties. Specifically, if there's going to be clearing on the site, is there revegetation that's going to be considered as you move forward with the project?
We've essentially kept everything, at least for the discussion level now, at least 50 feet off of the property lines. So there would be some natural screening that exists now. And if you look at kind of what exists on the property now, it's a heavily wooded site. So I think that, an effort to protect that is important.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
There is also an easement that runs kind of east to west for National Grid. And, that kind of bisects the property per se. But I think the effort to keep it back from the street significantly, I guess it's what input or what is the board viewing as a reasonable amount of buffer on the perimeter where the cemetery itself is.
So that's easily addressed. 25 feet is not enough.
Okay.
So without trying to design the project, I would just be requesting that you give consideration to adding adequate landscape buffer against those vistas where the vegetation might be sparse.
Okay.
So there might be exceptions. I'd have to look at a little bit more information. Obviously, things like your wetland area, we're not looking for plantings along that kind of feature, but abutting property owners or places where the vegetation is sparse, just give that some thought.
Absolutely.
A couple of other minor considerations. It looks like this is going to be an asphalt roadway.
Yes.
So my recollection, and forgive me, it's been some years, we don't get to put asphalt under a National Grid easement, or what used to be National Grid. So do you have any thoughts on that?
We would probably, there is a macadam surface that's at the entrance of the driveway now. I think we would work with National Grid to come up with an alternative that satisfies their requirements, but also permits operation of the cemetery so that those folks that are in that northern part or the families of those that are in the northern part can access that.
Understood. Okay, give that some thought as you move forward with your application. And then lastly, perhaps of a minor nature to most people, but not myself. There seems to be some confusion with regards to the certification on the survey work. Can't really have a limited content boundary survey in accordance with class 4, so you might want to have Chris refresh himself on that. There's also a note that the boundary here is taken from another plan. So as you move forward, that's perfectly acceptable.
Yep. As
As you move forward, a copy of that plan must be a part of your submission package.
So Mr. Condil, as part of the transaction, has worked out where the surveyor of record that did this parcel previously will provide the class 1 certification for this moving forward.
You can either do that on your plan, or if there's going to be if there was a previously published plan, simply attach that.
And, I mean, as the board is aware, there've been other applications that were unsuccessful on this parcel. So there really isn't any real need to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to.
No, I'm not suggesting that at all.
Yeah,
Okay, good. Just want to follow the
the procedures,
set
yes.
forth by the board. Good. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Any communication with the abutters in the area? Or when does that come?
I think that will come through as part of the process as we move forward. This is really just, are we even in the ballpark at this point?
I can help answer that, Keith. I'm in a butter to this project. So I had just a few things to note. Mr. Diorio addressed one of my comments about the buffering, 25 feet being too little. For my own personal, we are property owners to the east of this project, so we get a lot of the natural buffering from those wetlands. So I'm not concerned for my personal interest, but some of the neighbors on the other side, right now, their properties that buffer this site, the view is entirely wooded. And so I would think that when this project does proceed, they would, they'll be noticed, obviously. I think they would have interest in also retaining some more natural tree buffer or vegetated material buffer between their properties and this site. The other thing, I think one of the reasons why likely we have a special use permit requirement for this type of use in a residential zone is because it is it's not really a residential use. It's almost like a small business that's in a residential neighborhood. And with that, probably traffic patterns are going to be different because of the use of the property. Chase Hill Road is notorious for being a difficult road to traverse in some places. The quality of the road isn't great, and the design is not modern. So, entering this site is coming up a hill, and there's a blind corner on the other side as well. So I would think that things like funeral processions and, long lines of vehicles, there might be I would support a traffic study for the site and trying to understand how to accommodate that.
I think and this is the type of discussion we want to have, and I think we would in all likelihood present that as part of the master plan submission. Though in talking through this, both with my colleagues and with the applicant, I think the one thing that this use does that kind of helps the situation, if that's not too much of an overstatement, is that the funeral activities would definitely not occur during peak hours in the morning or in the afternoon. You know, the funerals typically take place late morning or early afternoon. So, you know, the ability, I'm forecasting that the ability to detrimentally impact the level of service probably doesn't become an issue at peak times when the road is used most heavily. But I certainly would, you know, offer that a traffic study can also look at, you know, overall what potentially are the impacts to this.
Yeah, that would be great. And another thing that occurred to me is I appreciate the phasing or the suggestion of phasing. But one thing to note about that is, let's say a traffic study shows that improvements to the road are needed in order to accommodate this use. And those are invested in and made, and maybe they materially change the character of the road in that area, let's say. And then the phasing of the use doesn't go forward as intended, and it's a very small cemetery. And now the town is essentially, you know, we've changed a part of the road. We've made some investments that are no longer needed, but they still need to be maintained. So I guess I'm just raising a concern about, you know, changing the character and the use of that area should the full build out plan not come to fruition. And I know you can't really comment or predict anything about that, but that would be one of the concerns I would have.
I would like to kind of offer at least this kind of thought is, I know that there have been in other communities significant developments that were impactful to traffic situations. And typically what the traffic study had done is if the use reaches a certain level that then determines that the upgrades are required, then they're done at that time. And I think that helps to, if it does remain small, we don't necessarily have to invest in upgrades to the infrastructure, but if we get to trigger levels, potentially that might be something that needs to be looked at.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks.
I also would love to offer my thanks to the chairman and the members of the board for taking us a little bit out of order. I know that having served as a planning board chairman, I know that we value our time, and I appreciate the accommodation.
I think he's welcome to stay all night.
I
Plots are you planning, and how many would be in the?
In looking at cemetery guidelines and how things are done, we're probably in the 39 to 4,000 category as far as potential grave sites based on kind of the analysis we're looking at now.
You say 39 to 4,000?
3,900 to.
Oh, 3,900. That's a really wide range. I don't understand.
I think that needs to come from the applicant, and we can certainly have them kind of as part of the master plan to say, you know, what do you think the reasonable breakdown of phases is going to be?
Yeah, two comments regarding the 25-foot buffer. What do you recommend it be?
I think that the applicant needs to review the site condition and make a determination that in certain areas, you know, we've got a fantastic cluster of mountain laurel here. I don't really need too much in the way of additional plantings. But over here, I have a stand of beech. That's going to need some amendments.
Yep.
That kind of thing. So in one area, I don't know, perhaps 25 feet could cut the mustard. In another area, 75 feet might not be good enough. Yeah,
So,
leave it up.
you know, we have a landscape architect on staff at Dupree, and I don't think it would be unreasonable to, as part of the master plan submission, have her kind of walk the property, get a feel for where limits of disturbance are kind of identified now and what may work with the vegetation that exists so that we can proactively be on top of this.
And I'd also like to take into account what abutting property owners have to say. I mean, this parallels, if you will, solar applications. You know, there are some vistas that need to be
Protected.
retained.
Yeah.
And there are others that we might be prepared to sell. Anyway, hope that answers the question.
Yes.
I would like to follow up on Emily's concern about traffic patterns. I'm looking at the site plan and, you know, this is very close to one major roadway, and it's a long way off from the other major roadway. We might want to consider limiting access to this site from the Ashaway Road. And how would we do that? When you arrange your entrance to the site, you would make it virtually impossible to access from the westerly portion of Chase Hill Road. That way, if there needs to be improvements, by the way, if there need to be improvements, the town is not picking up the tab. They would be the minimum, given the distance between Ashway Road and the site. Just a thought. I can't see a funeral procession coming in from Route
That's a
3.
long way. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be, that
Or
would
up
be
Oak Street.
madness.
There's only one good pattern to enter the site.
And that one
Oak
has,
Street, I don't think would be a good one. Or coming from Eaton House Bridgeway.
well, that's what I was just gonna raise is the bridge is it's like wood planks.
Oh, no, not that bridge.
Oh,
'Cause they-
well,
they
from
can come in-
Ashway Road,
Yeah, that's.
Well,
a
there's
consider-
actually Bradford Road and actually Westerly Road. So
Right.
yeah, that's
For
a
the sake of
consideration.
clarity, we'll call them Route 3 and Route 216. So from 216, they don't actually have to go over that bridge
right,
because there's the island there. So
right.
that seems like the only reasonable entrance into that area.
Agree.
For your consideration.
Duly noted.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I got a couple.
Right.
I've got a couple.
hang on, let us get,
I just have just a couple of inquiries / comments. On the phasing, you've identified cemetery areas 1 through, looks like 6. Is that the proposed phasing or is that just areas?
Just areas for now.
Okay. So you'd want to be telling us when you come back what you think would be the first phase. And the other thing that I note here is that there's no parking, if you will, other than on the roadway itself. There's no pullovers, little small areas to park. Seems like it might be a long way to go for folks to walk on foot. So I'm just thinking about that. And then just to clarify whether or not you'll be having one of those little buildings like they have over at the Veterans Cemetery and some of the other cemeteries where they have a service inside and then you go out to the cemetery.
So that is a question that I did ask the ownership group, and they will, all these burials will be exclusively graveside services. There won't be any kind of internment,
So
if you will.
no building for that
Correct.
purpose.
The only buildings they're looking at right now are one which is the existing dwelling that would, for the foreseeable future, remain as an office, and then potentially a maintenance building in the northwest corner.
An additional building.
Yes, but again, that would just simply be a maintenance facility, store backhoe.
Thank you.
okay.
I guess I'd like to see, or there must be some studies about just like solar, so what does this do to land values in the area? Positive or negative? or-
So a land use expert to kind of talk about property values.
I think we've satisfied the board. We have somebody in the audience, which is, you have a question for?
Just a question and a comment. Eric Bibler, Woodville Road. Were all the abutters to the property notified that you were going to appear here tonight, or was that not necessary?
It's not necessary.
Okay, so I just wanted to caution the board in case you don't know. I think I'm familiar with both of the abutters to the property. I know Emily on the other side was Ted Dion, who passed away 3 years ago, I think. I don't know whether his widow still lives there. I know his plan was to leave the property to his nieces and nephew. I think he's owned the property for over 50, 60 years. And it is absolutely immaculate. The family treasures that property. So I just want to urge the planning board that they should be part of this conversation. They've got some deep roots in Ashaway. They've cared for this property meticulously for many decades. And I think there should be adequate buffers so that, their experience, in a residential neighborhood isn't unjustly compromised. So I just wanted to offer that caution.
All right, thank you. I would like to just throw my 2 cents worth in there. It'll all be posted, and everyone will be notified, so they'll have an opportunity to come at the different stages.
Yes,
At this stage where,
it's just an informational kind of
Right.
sharing.
okay,
Anybody online, maybe?
We don't have anyone online, but I have just a couple of quick comments. Most of the questions that I had come with have been answered, like in relation to what's happening with the building. And also in relation to the survey. Just 2 notes then remaining. One is this will require an aquifer protection permit, and 2, this will require a special use permit. I know that I noted that in my memo to you, but those are just some additional layers of review that this proposal will undergo.
okay, thank you. Where should we go from here?
Actually, this isn't really a question directly for the applicant. It's more of just wondering aloud about the process. Does DEM get involved in areas where there is an aquifer that people rely on for drinking water when there's a cemetery that?
Yes, so this project obviously disturbs in excess of 1 acre of property. So it is required to go through DEM's freshwater wetlands program, the RIPDES program, and the stormwater program. Now, the stormwater program in RIPDES is merged into what is called a general permit. But that is part of it. And through that, we are required to identify community wellheads, aquifer protection districts, and how the regulations, the stormwater regulations, non-point discharge regulations are structured takes into account those resources.
Okay, yeah, and there are special considerations for the fact that you're burying chemicals essentially.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Those applications, though, don't necessarily take into account the fact that property is going to be used as a cemetery, do they?
We would identify that as part of the application.
Okay, that's a good question. I'm not quite sure freshwater wetlands is going to care, but well, anyway, leave that up to you. It's a consideration and a
Yep.
thought that's been put on the table. Nothing required for pre-application.
We
They're
can move along.
dismissed.
I did have one other question. The master plan process requires a series of packages be delivered to various agencies, whatnot. I guess the board's processes, those are done by the applicant. So does the applicant then collect that and then submit it as part of the application, or are those responses required to go to the town? And then could we be provided that cumulative list of contacts and information so that we can make sure that everybody that needs to be notified is notified?
I can assist the applicant with that.
I was going to say, the planner can provide you with the list of the contacts. You are not required to compile them. You are required to notify them and ask them for their comments. Obviously, you can't make them respond.
Yep.
But your obligation is to notify.
Okay. And then is that typically done through a certified mail process? And then we say, Here's the,
It's not required to be done through certified mail. If you'd like to, obviously, then that's proof of mailing. And I would suggest, because it is departmental heads and those kinds of things, as much advance notice that you could give them. It would, certainly it has to be at least the same that you would give the abutters, but I would suggest doubling that.
okay.
Okay, thank you. It appears
Thank you very much.
we're done.
Have a great
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you. Back to the first page.
Clearing some space.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Attorney Craven. You're up. As we revert back to the old business, agenda, it's Skunk Hill Road Solar first, public informational hearing.
Okay. Give the historical record first. We were last here in December, early December. And the board's plan was to send it to your Conservation Commission. Through the process of trying to comply with that request, we found out that you don't have a Conservation Commission that has a quorum. So therefore, you don't have one. I don't know whether I've spoken to your solicitor, planning solicitor about this. And she may be requesting that you modify that request. Or you'd have to go about getting a group of people that would make a quorum for a Conservation Commission. All of probably would be new people, and it might take some time to get up to speed. So I'm going to pass on that because we haven't done what you'd requested because of the defense of impossibility. We couldn't do it.
Yes, we only have 2 members of the Conservation Commission and
Yeah, it's
One
not
and a
enough.
half or two.
yeah, we don't have enough quorum to, as Attorney Craven said, make a quorum. We're kind of,
Hmm.
you know,
So I can leave that to the end of my comments and go to the second matter, which is the objector's request and the master plan public informational meeting. There was a specific, I'll call it a motion to dismiss that was filed by Mr. Ryan.
That's on the second application though, right?
Yes, it is.
Atlantic
Atlantic.
Solar. So before we get to
You want to
that,
act on this one first?
well, Mr. Craven, if we could, I know that there has been a request that's coming to the planner's office previously that before we get long into a meeting, we inquire as to whether there are any members of the public that have comments or questions for Skunk Hill before they move on to the next application. That might be a
Sure.
expedient way to do it.
Oh, I'm confused. Are we staying with Skunk Hill?
You're staying with Skunk Hill for the moment to see if there's anybody out there in the audience or, in Cyberland.
And I have made Mr. Ryan a panelist.
Oh, Mr. Ryan is here. Okay.
no, not yet. Charlie, are you gonna contact Mr. Ryan or?
I've asked him to unmute.
Can the board hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a suggestion on the Conservation Commission issue. Which the board can act on appropriately or not. I think that it might be easier for the board to, or I would suggest that if the master plan is approved for Skunk Hill, that you then send it to a Conservation Commission if it exists prior to the plan, the preliminary review. Because I think you've gotten to the point where we've been at this for almost 3 years, and I don't think anybody knows when you're going to have a Conservation Commission. So that's just a suggestion I have from a procedural point of view.
I don't,
Like I said, call a meeting, at least 5 people in it, I think around the November time. Kind of fall apart since then, or?
Started when the historical chairperson resigned.
Everything kind of fell apart at that point.
It had a cascading effect.
yeah, so I have a thought, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
My computer just went numb.
It just went to sleep.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
So listen, well, I think it's a wonderful thing that the Conservation Commission weighs in on a project like this. It's unconscionable to hold the applicant hostage here. We don't have one, we don't have one. If we can't pull one together, we can't pull one together. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I agree.
I agree as well. Okay, where do we go from here?
There are some members of the public, I believe, that want to either comment or question.
Okay, the cyber people are,
Oh, it's
there's only the
in
one?
the audience, right?
Cyber people.
The people in
There
cyber?
is a member of the public online who's raised their hand. I don't know if you wanted to alternate maybe between people in public, people online, or have all
We've got
people,
at least one
how
lady.
you want to do it.
Yeah, we've got at least one lady. That way she can say what she wants, and if she wants to go home, she's good. Or if she wants to stay, she's welcome. But
Okay.
come on up, miss.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Luann McCormick from Lisa Lane. So it's nice to see everybody in person. It's been a long time. Clear cutting of unfragmented forest, potential runoff damage to environmentally sensitive wetlands, destruction of wildlife habitat. Those and many more are the organic, significant negative environmental impacts that have been attested to by expert witnesses. When an environmental impact study was suggested, Planning Board member Emily made the point that the abutting neighborhoods are part of the environment to be considered. Danger to the children in the abutting neighborhoods, kids around electricity, 12-foot berms blocking line of sight views and natural light to abutting homes, abutters looking out at a sea of glass from their second-story windows, heavy equipment on Skunk Hill Lane posing a danger to kids waiting for school buses and people walking their dogs. Has there been any analysis of the access through the Gordon property into the Teft property? There's a very tight dog leg there that is very, very thin, and I don't see how that's going to be accessible without literally grazing 25 Francis Barber. Again, a huge impact to neighborhood. The other issue was the 40 decibels at the property line. I know that that Attorney Craven had talked about the fact that that was like a loud whisper, but I looked up 40 decibels and that's the beginning of urban noise. It's like hearing a refrigerator humming at somebody's property line, constant at their property line. There's also the drop in the abutters' property values that's also been attested to by an expert witness. Then there's the damage to our town infrastructure. Skunk Hill Road isn't wide enough or well enough as a road to accommodate all the heavy equipment that would be required to do this project. The list goes on. And all of this negative impact is for what? Certainly not for the betterment of this town. It's for a solar developer and a landowner to make money. This potential solar development could not be sited in a worse location. It looms over so many people in multiple neighborhoods. And the developers, their attorneys, and their expert witnesses have done absolutely nothing to assuage our concerns about the environmental impacts and how it's going to impact our neighborhoods. Really, and I don't need to get into this in any detail, but obviously, the only reason, and this has already been specifically said in front of this board, that the only reason why they got approval on this was for the money for our schools. And Frank Landolfi came in here. He's furious. He's already said on the record that he would never have approved this plan or any other plans had he known then what he knows now. And we have, the bottom line is we've heard their expert witnesses dismiss the environmental concerns in flippant and unsubstantial ways. It's just been very concerning, and in my opinion, it's been disrespectful of our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods have been under this dark cloud for over 4 years. We have attended a multitude of meetings, and quite frankly, it's like a blur at this point. The opposition was massive, and as I look around this room, there's a few people that have hung in there, and that continue to show up and continue to to bring this issue forward. But please don't forget the fact that, and if you weren't here, or if you didn't watch what happened at the town council when this was being brought forward, there was massive opposition. There were people in line for the public forum. There were people pleading. There were people reasoning with the town council. There were people crying and begging. There were huge crowds that showed up for this. And then on the night of the vote, the room was standing room only. And I mean, a lot of us were standing there, with signs, vote no, vote no. There were a couple of women and kids that were actually in tears because all of this fell on deaf ears of 3 council members who all they could see were the dollar signs that, by the way, they didn't end up getting in the end. So to add insult to injury, they've drastically reduced the monetary gain, but they still want you to approve this plan. There's absolutely no question that this project poses significant risk of environmental impacts. The only question is how much damages they're going to be. So I'm asking you to please make a motion to deny on the inherent threat to our environment based on your required findings of 353 and 357. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yep, we have some people in, on Zoom. We'd like to hear from them.
Okay, the
Or-
young lady in the back.
Are we alternating?
Oh, yeah, let's alternate. That's a good idea. Let's go
Alternate?
from one of the people, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Ms. Stefan, please state your name for the record.
Hi, thank you. My name is Colleen Steffen, property owner at 22 Lisa Lane, Hope Valley, Caninchet, abutting the Skunk Hill project at an intimate distance. It's important to me first to recognize that all of us, no matter where we sit in Hopkinton, we're all on Indigenous land. It is my personal honor to acknowledge the land I live on and love so much in an effort to name what has been intentionally buried. Here in Hopkinton, we're gathered on the traditional homelands of the Narragansett people. I want to honor with gratitude the land itself and the Narragansett and Native people, past and present, and all the Indigenous persons who have preserved this beautiful valley for tens of thousands of years. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of oppression, violence, displacement, and migration, which made this colonial segment of this town possible. I hope you join me in expressing respect and gratitude for the environment and the people of this land who have cared for this area. Tonight, I would like to kindly remind you, you must render a positive finding that the proposed project will have no significant adverse environmental impact in order to improve the application. I urge you to please consider all of the available evidence that has been provided over the last about 4 years, including scientific studies, expert opinions, and input from residents, abutters, and stakeholders. If the evidence suggests that this project will have a profound and significant adverse impact on the environment as a whole, then it is not appropriate to approve it. To add some specifics, the adverse here has a very specific meaning. While negative, and we've used negative and adverse, interchangeably, but it's important to note, I think, that negative refers to anything that is undesirable or unfavorable without necessarily implying any specific harm or danger, like a negative opinion, like, we have all heard in different contexts. Sorry, I'm catching my my breath. But on the other hand, adverse specifically implies that something has a harmful or detrimental effect. For example, if the environment has adverse effects from a project, it's experiencing harmful effects. So loss of wetlands, loss of animal habitat, loss of carbon protection from mature unfragmented forests. These are all things that are adverse negative effects. So while negative and on adverse both refer to something undesirable. I want to just be clear when I'm speaking about adverse, it's connoting harm, negative, harmful, tangible negative impact. And so speaking of that, the source of revenue should not come at the expense of other factors such as economic, environmental stability, social well-being, and quality of life of residents. And while economic growth is important for the prosperity of this town and the longevity of this town and why we all want to stay here, it should not come at the expense of, I would say, 3 other main factors such as social well-being, quality of life, and environmental stability. On the economic benefits, this project will not yield the revenue initially promised. One, if the developer lied about promised revenue, it raises concerns about their integrity and ability to fulfill other promises related to the project that haven't even started yet. This promised revenue to the project, has all but vanished. And keeping this going now just leaves one benefactor for the project. And even Mr. Landolfi spoke at a previous meeting that he would not approve this project now, given the loss in tax opportunity. On the environmental impacts, you'll recall expert testimony of our environmental expert, Linda Steer, on February 2nd, 2022. And that was just over 13 months ago. And she followed up with a letter in July 22 that says, quote, "It's the applicant's burden of proof to show how the proposed plan, which is contrary to so many official state policy documents and guidelines and completely contrary to the findings and recommendations of so many highly respected public and private conservation groups, can possibly be determined by the planning board to have no negative significant environmental impacts." And she finished by saying the applicant has clearly failed to meet that burden, and end quote. Additionally, you'll also have her remember testimony on the adverse effects of property values with proximity to large scale solar. Properties within 1/10 of a mile specifically from the project will experience an insufferable loss of value. And this specifically hits me square in the nose. And I'm hoping that this is a part that is important to note, that my property value is estimated to lose significant financial security for my family. And I'm only one of 44. So that's just one thing to remember. And thirdly, quality of life cannot be understated. The placement of this project is not consistent with our town area, with the way we love the scenic beauty of the area, the scenic views. And I think I urge you to consider all of the evidence that's been provided so far when you're making your decision. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. This in the back.
Hi, I'm Jane Rathbun. I live at 135 Skunk Hill Road. I was one of the criers back in 2019 when this started. I don't know.
You're in a butter, correct?
Yes, I'm a butter. Oh, I'm a butter and a butter.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm just nervous.
That's fine. Take your time.
Deep breath. Yeah, thank you. Long ago, I asked Mr. Landolfi about how it was going to affect my property values. I have lived in my house 45 years in August. I have put my life savings into this home. He told me that it didn't matter not to use anything from the internet, that I had to have an expert. Well, everything went so quickly through the town council. It didn't seem like it was quick, but it was quick for everybody that didn't have a lawyer. So this time we have someone that we said or was someone that was an expert. It was worse than I thought when I talked to Mr. Landolfi and I did my internet search. Please think about that when you decide what you're going to do. It may not mean anything to you because you don't live next to this. I was also told at one time that I wasn't going to be able to see it from my house. When I talked to the town council person, I said, "You mean to tell me I can go up to my second floor and look out?" "Oh, no, I don't mean that. I mean that you can not see it from the road. We're going to put a berm back there." That's where my house is. the berm. The other worry I have, my well is in my backyard. Between that well and this project is a marshland that is also on my property. So when everybody talks about what it's going to do to the environment, it's my property that you're talking about, not theirs. They may have some things on their property, but my property is exactly next to theirs. They can't do much. It's not going to affect me. I looked at the train that went off in Ohio. They have somebody to sue. Something happens to my well, do I sue you? Or do I sue them? Or do I get told again, I have to get a lawyer? I don't have that kind of money for a lawyer. So you know what it's going to leave me. So please, when you are deciding what you're going to do and you look at all this environmental information that you have, you can turn this down. You don't have to listen. It is zoned for that, but you have a right to decide if this plan is any good. You have a right to determine that it is environmentally unsound. So you can see why I cried the first time. Thank you for listening. I don't know if it'll make any difference, but I had to talk to you.
Okay, thank you for coming up. Talia.
Mr. Geever, please state your name for the record. After unmuting yourself.
Right, David Geever, live on Anna Drive in the same neighborhood as Luann and close to Jane. My comments are going to be pretty short because there's been plenty of testimony over the past 4+ years about this project. So I don't know how you're going to vote, but I wanted to address any level of discomfort you might have in terms of trying to deny this application for very good reasons. And the reason my comments are short is that the testimony that you've already got in your records refer to Linda Steele's points. In fact, in your records, I believe you have at least 8 citations that she refers to that should give you some comfort if you're uncomfortable now about backing up your decision to deny this. Those are well-founded, credible citations that she refers to. So you can lean on that in order to, I suppose, I'll use a word of being courageous and denying this application. Basically, it boils down to a situation, as I see it, that this project refers to the proverbial trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It's just not going to work. No matter what mitigation efforts the applicant has put forth, putting it into a round hole just is not going to work now, and it will never work. So I'm hoping that relying on some past testimony, again, it's well documented, it's credible, you can feel comfortable about denying this. So that's my feeling. When I have uncertainty about a decision, if I can rely on credible witnesses or credible testimony or credible citations to which to refer, I feel a heck of a lot more comfortable, and I hope you do too, in terms of denying this project. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Mr. Bibble, come on up. Okay.
Maybe don't have to cut me off.
Not a butters, 5 minutes.
Okay. Eric Bibler, Woodville Road. I'm hoping that this is the last time that I address you on this subject, as I'm sure you're all fervently hoping as well. It's been a long road. It's been 4.5 years. It's been one of the oddest experiences of my life. And I want to tell you why a little bit. 4.5 years. I've been to every single meeting. beginning with the initial planning board meeting for this project, no one in Hopkinton, other than the 3 counselors that voted for the zone change, have publicly spoken in favor of this project over that entire time, who does not have a financial interest in the project, to my recollection. No one. So we had at least 100 people in an auditorium during the zoning hearings begging the town council not to approve it. Where did they all go? Sometimes people say, you know, well, where are they if people are opposed? Oddly, there are dozens of people in Hopkinton who think this is over because the developer said he'd be breaking ground by March 2020. And they look around and they see the ground hasn't been broken, and they actually think the project has gone away. I know that seems bizarre to the people in this room, but that's actually true. Then there are many dozens of people, and I've spoken to many of them personally and knocked on doors, many of whom were abutters, who have gone to these meetings, not just here, but I mean at the town council, and received such what they regard as, you know, hostile treatment from some members of the council and the planning board. They're just so completely disillusioned by the endless discussions of the engineering plans and sort of staying away from, you know, the critical findings that are, you know, in this case are sort of the baseline that you have to get past before you talk about the spacing of the panels and the technology and what kind of grass and how many trees to replant and all that stuff. So they've essentially given up. They feel powerless, and really, who could really go the distance? Who could really stay the course for 4.5 years and keep coming back? And by the way, a lot of those meetings I've come to were canceled, right? So a lot of people, including me, reserved their evenings only to find out that we kicked the can down the road several months. So I find it extremely odd that, you know, we're still talking a project that basically doesn't have a single advocate in town. Out of the 3 counselors that originally voted for it, the most ardent proponent was clearly Frank Landolfi, and all of the counselors that voted for it cited as their primary reason for voting for it the revenue that would accrue. There were detailed estimates of the revenue that would accrue from these projects, and at least 40% of that revenue has gone out the window. So you have heard Frank come here and say he adamantly would never vote for this project or any of the other solar projects anymore, because his benefits detriments analysis and actually his comp plan analysis was that this was consistent with the comp plan because there are economic benefits mentioned in the comp plan. So I know that the solicitor has said that you can't consider consistency with the comp plan. We disagree on that point. It's our view that the state statute requires that you render a finding on whether it's consistent with the comp plan. It doesn't state that you simply reiterate an old opinion of the town council in a different context, in a different kind of hearing. And by the way, when 5 counselors voted on the project in 2019, 2 of them adamantly disagreed that it was consistent with the comp plan. And in 2018, all 5 members unanimously agreed that it was not consistent with the comp plan. The comp plan is just our document that tries to capture what we think is in the best interest of the town. So thus far, I think we have a pretty strong majority of people that don't think this is in the best interest of the town. I only have 30 seconds unless I get any latitude from the chair, but I just want to say that it's required that you make a finding that there's no significant environmental impact. We've had an environmental expert, and we've also had James Hool up here, the real estate appraiser. Both of those are types of environmental impacts, but I think suffice it to say that the developer has never rebutted the fact that we're going to be have a significant environmental impact. They've just said grass is every bit as good as trees, and they've offered nothing to back that up. It's just their opinion, but there will definitely be, you have all the evidence in the world, a very significant environmental impact. And I'm going to finish on this, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hool's testimony He's expert witness, he's qualified, he's competent to testify. He provided you with the evidence you asked for. You asked for more evidence on local projects, and he went and got that and showed you that there will be a very significant adverse impact on local property values. That testimony was never rebutted by any expert witness on the part of the applicant. That testimony stands unrebutted, unchallenged. It's not sufficient to pull a study off of the internet that was provided by a planning board member, shoveled over to the applicant, and then entered into evidence without any expert opinion to back it up. So I just want to say that that expert testimony is pretty powerful, and it's essentially unrebutted. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Eric, you had that study when in 2019? It was first sent to you specifically, only you?
Carolyn, I don't recall the circumstances of receiving the study. I'm not a qualified expert in real estate evaluation, and I didn't testify here as an expert on the property value impacts. My point is that in this setting, you're allowed to consider the competent testimony of qualified experts. We brought in a qualified expert to testify to his findings. The other side did not bring in a qualified expert to rebut those findings, and he did not bring in a qualified expert to present any findings of his own. He did not bring in a qualified, excuse me, I'm not done, I'm answering this. And
The question
Mr. Butler,
was,
please.
do you recall receiving that in 2019? And when I emailed it directly to you, which I shouldn't have, it was a resend of the 2019 email that I had sent you with the study.
So-
That's what I was just
Excuse me.
checking. Just checking, and you've answered. You don't recall.
No.
That's fine.
No, that's not true.
You know, we're getting into a debate here.
I don't think we should be having this
We've
debate.
covered this
Okay?
many times.
But-
We've covered it many
Well,
times.
I don't appreciate the insinuation. You sent it to me, Carolyn, but I'm not competent to
Mr. Bibler.
testify to the planning board
Mr. Bibler.
about the,
The argument is over. Thank you.
Ms. Steffen
No,
has
I'm
raised
not-
her hand again.
An expert on property values. The only thing that I'm an expert on is I live right next to a solar field, Baxton Hill Road. It's right outside my window. I don't hear anything. My property value went up $104,000 this year. I got a letter last week. So the valuation of the property, this sends a red flag. I'm not really agreeing. Hold on, please. Hold on. You'll get your turn. Thank you.
Who's online? Who's on?
Yes, the
Ms.
line-
Steffen has raised her hand again. If you would like to hear from her, or if you'd like to hear from someone else who is
Okay, we had someone in the audience.
in the
now, someone
audience. It's Ms. Steffen again, so I'm asking if you'd like to hear from someone.
I actually have a comment on behalf of all this money that we've been talking about. And I think that you might be the person who could help answer this question. Okay. So when the town council made a decision several years ago that this project was going to bring economic value to our community, what was that number? What number was the town council looking at back then? And there's only been reference to the amount of revenue that is declining. What I would like to know as a resident, it's not part of the planning board's decision. What is this number? What is the town's expectation that this project with the new legislation is going to offer the community? And then on behalf of the residents and the abutters, at a conservative number, the study that I offered people to review, at a conservative rate, said you can expect 3% decline in your property value. So 3% on $1 million worth of property value is $30,000. How many $30,000 are we talking about at that conservative number? Because if Skunk Hill's revenue is a wash to what you're losing in your tax base, you need to know. I'd like.
Mr. Moffett. Mr. Moffett, please come to the podium. Thank you.
I think we can have somebody.
Steve Moffett, I'm the town council liaison. I just want to say, I didn't understand one thing you said. I understand maybe a couple, then you kind of went off into a different subject, but
Oh, it's all one subject.
well, it was, there was probably 4 different questions in there. I mean, I
No,
think everyone here, but
no,
so your question as to what the town council was expecting, well, first of all, I was not on that town council.
that's okay. You
Okay,
have records
so-
and you have.
Sure,
access to
sure.
that data.
So we were expecting tangible taxes, right? The tangible taxes being the 5,000 per megawatt, right? And then we were anticipating being able to assess the property value, commercial value of $45,000 an acre. That is no longer the case. The property legislation proposed, or it is now, is that we can only tax it. Anything that has solar underneath of it can only be taxed at what it was assessed at previously. So in this case, I know part of it's a farm. So instead of a $45,000 assessment, farm, I think is 300, 1,000. So you're
The
talking,
number, because when the town council makes.
well, see, I don't think that number really has anything. I mean, that's not a decision that you're not making your decision based on a tax number. I mean, that's not a qualification to approve this project.
I thought it was a fair
So,
question.
no, it's a fair question. I mean, absolutely. I mean, for a better answer, I would ask a professional, our tax assessor. I'm sure she'll give you a great answer. So, I mean, I would definitely encourage you to do that. And as far as the property assessments going up in town, it's a reassessment. The mill rate will be changed. Okay. Right now it's currently 1853. With the increase, we're going to lower the mill rate. Because if we didn't lower the mill rate, we wouldn't be in this problem. We would have all the money in the world.
My comment had nothing to do with where the mill rate.
Sure, I was just addressing what Ron was saying. Everybody's complaining about their property values going up.
Okay, my question was specific to the abutters.
Sure.
That are concerned that they're going to lose property value. And we had different numbers. We had an expert for the abutters come in and say it was going to be between 7 and 8%. And I brought a legitimate study that Mr. Craven actually called the author on that said at a conservative rate, just using that study number of 3%.
Sure.
My question is, if you have $1 million in tax revenue and you're gonna lose 3% because property values go down, we know what that number is. What we want to know now, what the fair question is on behalf of the residents, is with the new legislation for taxing solar projects, it's a fixed number. You can figure it out.
Sure.
What is the number that the town will be looking at? We heard.
I don't know. I don't think that's really a question I'm qualified to answer. I mean-
Liaison to the planning board, I thought it would be appropriate for you to see.
Sure, but I still, you might want to write that question down because I am not understanding what you're exactly looking for because I don't think the town is looking for an expectation. I think the town is looking for what was said was going to be paid based on what these projects were going to bring in. That's a hard number and that's the number that I think the town expected. And that's not the number that's
So
going to happen.
Realistically, today, if we voted yes, the project's going through, there is a hard number that the town of Hopkinton is going to collect in revenues.
Sure,
from
and that is a
project.
tangible tax, right?
That's-
On the megawatts, right? So it's 20 megawatts times 5,000,
In the land.
100,000
Guys,
in the
guys,
land.
excuse me for just a
I'm
moment.
going to stop what she's
I just wanted to say that the poor stenographer can only take one person at a time. So if everybody can just take a deep breath before they respond and so that the steno can take it down. Thank you.
So whatever that number is, would have been $45,000 per acre commercial. Now it is not. So do the math on 3% on 45,000 versus
I'm not
300.
qualified to do that math.
Right, right.
I'd
So-
like the experts, just like at the town council, when this decision was made, that this is the kind of revenue we could see, those people with that formula can come back and say, this is what we anticipate from the project today. That's I didn't create the dollar amount that the town councilors voted on then.
Nor did I.
And I can't do it now, but the town council has people who did put together a formula
Yeah.
that came up with that anticipated revenue number.
Yeah.
So realistically, don't you, as a town council member, want to know, what does this project really mean financially to the town? As a whole.
I do now. The way that it is, it's substantially nowhere close to what it was going to be.
So do
I
you
mean,
know
that's
the
a,
number?
anything underneath is a pretty fair answer, I
You know
think.
the number?
Hold
What
on,
did it-
everybody. Let's, as our solicitor suggested, let's take a breath. If we comprise questions, or if we just verbally ask you the questions, can you go to the town council and come back with answers to those questions?
I'm sure the tax
I don't
assessor
need-
could have those answers tomorrow as soon as she
Yeah.
walked in the
Can I-
door.
Can I finish the sentence?
Please.
Is that a big problem for you?
It kind of is. I mean,
If we ask you the questions, can you get the answers back to us?
absolutely.
Very good, thank you. That's the answer I was looking for.
I just don't think those numbers should play into your, and I'm sure your solicitor agrees with me also. The fact that we're talking about numbers right now and taxes and
I
stuff on this
prefaced my
application is
conversation by
ridiculous.
Saying that this inquiry is on behalf of the abutters and the residents. I'm a resident. And it has no bearing on the decision that the planning board made. I prefaced my comments with that specifically. So it's not going in the direction you're saying it's going in.
What are we talking about?
Yes, thank you. All right, okay, this,
Yeah, this
the
is.
agenda item
Right.
doesn't even come close to this discussion.
I
So
will
can
do
we
my own.
please just like either ask a question or move on?
I just wanted to make a couple comments, and all my comments is that this project was not rubber stamped by the last town council. Okay, you're the planning board. You do planning board things. The town council does town council things. Okay, there's different lanes. Okay, so you can agree that this isn't compatible with a comp plan. I mean, that's your job as the planning board, if you feel that way. I mean, are you going to make a decision based on what the last town council said? I mean, and obviously, pass an ordinance for it, but it just doesn't make it consistent. So,
The solicitor has already ruled on that. That's like, why, I don't even know why we're talking about that again.
right, but she's a solicitor ruling on it. I'm just saying you have a role. I mean, that's it. I mean, then why do we have a planning board? Why don't we just have a solicitor and we can bring all the projects in front of the solicitor? I mean,
The solicitor's job is to keep us out of hot water. What are you saying? We don't listen to it? That doesn't even make sense.
So if the solicitor could jump in for just a moment,
Please.
please do not misconstrue. I do not make rulings. Only the planning board makes rulings. Okay, I can offer advice, I can offer interpretation, and then the rest of it's up to the planning board, but I do not issue rulings.
Okay, thank you, Maggie.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you like to hear from Ms. Steffen now?
There's a gentleman in the audience.
My name is Richard Noel. I'm on Lisa Lane. I was here 4.5 years ago with the rest of the small representation you see. What I wanted to say was, first of all, and you and all of the folks on planning have kind of born with this as well as the rest of us. This has got to be old, just as old for you as for us. The point being that I think Mr. Moffett was trying to make, and it's obviously true, is that you have a role to play here. We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have to be here if you didn't have a role to play here. And it is true. I always thought about the money. It was chump change then, and it's half a chump change now. You can figure it out. I calculated once, just the homes on Lisa Lane pay more annually in taxes than the proposed amount of tax money under the original plan, whatever that was. But the bottom line is your responsibility is not somebody dangled a carrot in front of somebody on the town council and they bit. And I always felt like the Native Americans felt in the Northwest when the oil companies came in and told them they're going to give them a nickel a barrel for all the oil that they could possibly pump out of the ground. That they had, and to this today, it would still be hard to convince me that 4.5 years ago, the plan to make this reduction, to have a law in front of the representatives, to reduce the amount of money that they had, you would have to work very hard to convince me that that spontaneously popped up a very little while ago. So I think from the first day, they've held out a pot of gold and they've made all kinds of promises and all this. So, it's, life is going to be wonderful. But the bottom line is, I personally feel that we've been misused and taken advantage of. And I think that the real bottom line now is that the role you have to play is you don't necessarily have to agree with this council or any other council. Your function, as I see it, is to determine if this is or isn't consistent with our plan as expressed by everyone else in the town of Hopkinton. So congratulations for hanging in this long and doing the job that you have. But the bottom line is, we wouldn't be here if you had no role. If all you were going to do is come in, yep, we like it. The last town council said it, from your lips to God's ears. No, that's it's up to you guys to sit down and determine, does this or does this not belong in Hopkinton?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else online, Talia?
Yes, it's Ms. Steffen again. Just state your name for the record again.
Hi, it's Colleen Steffen. Thank you so much for hearing me once again. I really appreciate it. I know it's been a long night. I just want to echo Mr. Moffat's notes and really appreciate the perspectives. The town assessor's valuation, my house also went up ridiculously $135,000, which is fantastic. But the town assessor's valuation, the actual home buyer interest and pricing on a right now and in the future is very different. And town assessors are responsible for determining the assessed value of the property for tax purposes, just like this project has been assessed for tax purposes. But something is not better than nothing when it comes to weighing out this solution, especially when it's, when pieces keep falling off, when revenue keeps falling off. So the value of a property is based on various factors. The size of the property, the size of my property is not changing. The location is not changing. The condition of my house is not changing, knock on wood. But the market value of a property, what somebody's willing to pay to live here, is going to be very different than when they live on Keith, which is 500 feet away. And because, we live in an open and competitive market and it's a free market, it could be different from the assessed value that the town puts on it. So, I'm at the mercy of that. That's obviously not the town's responsibility, except that, it's not going to be appetizing for people to live in this area if market prices for homes are down, or if the aesthetic value of their property is down, or if they think they're like me, going to lose financial security from their home in a place that could be have less demand, for example, than Skunk Hill's neighbors down the street in Arcadia. And it may not affect you personally. If you're not in a butter, you may not feel this. But I feel it. We feel it, and just wanted to point out, I am fully not expecting to get today what that assessor's assessment would say should this property be next to a large scale solar plant. So thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it, and appreciate you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Talia?
There's no one else online.
I'm sorry, Talia, what was that?
There's no one else online with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add to my comments about the comp plan stuff. Sure, maybe you think your hands are tied with the comp plan, but environmentally, that's something that town council, you guys are kind of the technical crew here. You have all the experience in the world. Look at your resume, right? You know if there's going to be environmental stuff, right?
So let's be clear on the distinction. I don't want there to be any misunderstanding as far as the public is concerned. In my opinion, the issue of consistency with the comp plan is behind us. That said, the planning board still has findings of fact
Absolutely.
that it must
And this is why I'm back up here to mention that I realize that the comp plan is a comp plan. So whether you've decided that that's already been decided, but there are also environmental. And that's the only reason why I came up to mention that there are findings of fact. So
That's my opinion.
Absolutely.
The solicitor has told me.
Sure.
So let's let the public be clear that this is not rubber stamped as far as the planning board is
Right.
concerned. Just because a previous town council has opined on some zoning change. Planning board still has a role, a very significant role. I've stated this a number of times publicly. I don't want the public to think that it's a done deal.
And you have, and I remember you mentioned that many times. That I just want to say that the findings of fact, kind of got that a little mixed up with the comp plan and stuff, but I mean, there still is a hill. I'm not saying that we're handing this over, okay? I mean, but I just wanted to remind that, these findings of fact do include things that are substantial, and that's why they are findings of fact. And I appreciate all the input, all the time, effort to all this. So I don't want to leave on a bad note, angry, whatever,
I
but
don't know. Glad to clarify.
thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Mr. Geaver has raised his hand again, if you'd like to hear from.
Mr. Who?
Mr. Geaver has raised his hand again. Just state your name for the record again.
Yeah, thanks for unmuting me. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what I said because I feel it's right in line with what Mr. Diorio was just talking about. Please refer to the environmental irreparable damage that will occur as cited in Linda Steer's testimony. Those are the things that are the basis or the fundamentals for which one can rely on in terms of denying this application. It's very, very clear if you read those references and what's inside each one of them to which she has referred, it's very clear that you cannot accept this proposal. So it follows right along with what I feel Mr. Diorio's grounds for their consideration. It's somewhat irrelevant when you start talking about the tax base and the mill rate, et cetera. That does have an effect on the overall human environment, but the natural environment is referenced in Linda Steer's testimony. And you can feel comfortable, I think, if you rely on those citations as the basis of your decision to deny. Over.
Okay, thank you.
Hand in the background.
Yes, miss, come on up. State your name, please, for the record.
Hi, my name's Lynn LaPierre. I live on Maxon Hill Road. Like the chair, I also live or abut the Maxon Hill Solar Farm. Unlike the chair, I have had a very bad experience. The environmental impact has not been good. We've had a lot of water runoff. I have spent close to $1,000 repairing my driveway from runoff directly from the solar farm. I've spent countless thousands buying block from Home Depot, trying to shore up my driveway, trying to catch dirt from falling, washing away into my land. It's not just the environmental impact. There's a financial burden that's been placed directly on me and directly on my neighbors to deal with the problems that have come from the solar farm built next to us. And I just like that kept in mind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, if I could get some direction from our solicitor, where we could possibly go from here.
Okay, so this evening, there's been some questioning about the impact on the taxes. And Mr. Moffett had pointed out that there is a tax assessor in the town. The planning board can send a specific request to the tax assessor and request the information that you're looking for. I suspect, I recommend that you send a specific request asking for specific information if that's what you need to make your decision. And assuming there's no other issues that are raised this evening, I believe you are reaching the end of the application. And I'll leave it to Mr. Craven as to whether or not they rest or they want to wait until the planning board decides whether it's going to get this tax information. And my recommendation to the board is, this is a voluminous application with many, many meetings, many minutes to review, many documents to review, a compilation of the travel needs to be provided to you, and I will prepare that. But my recommendation to the board is that you set a special meeting to discuss, not to make a decision that night necessarily, unless you really feel prepared, but to discuss amongst yourselves in this open forum where you are, what your issues are, whether you can reach consensus on things. Because at that point, as you know, like tonight, I provided you with a draft decision for that 2-lot minor, which is fairly straightforward and rather simple. And I'll provide you with a basic set of findings of fact to start with. But as you know, as many other decisions that I've provided for you, we leave it open to you to make your own addition. You have to adopt those findings that I suggest. And you also make your own. There's been a lot of additions over the last couple of years. And then any conditions, if you're going to approve something, you add conditions to it. So there's a lot of work that's going to go into the decision in this. And it's important for everyone, the entire town, for you to be able to deliberate and to get it right. So that would be my recommendation to you. And we can hear from Mr. Craven as to, I believe they're concluded, but I don't want to speak for him.
Before I had a thought that maybe it's an outstanding issue, maybe it isn't, but we had John Brown come in and talk, and there was some discussion about working in concert with the land trust. And my question is that something that we're supposed to hear about from who's the agreement to steward that property? I'm feeling like it's an outstanding issue that might require some.
Are you posing that question to me, Carolyn, or are you just looking at me as you ask the question?
I'm wondering if that's an outstanding issue. I don't know.
I believe it is.
It is.
Yeah, I believe it is. We haven't focused on that yet because we got to find a party that's willing to take ownership of it, or whether the developer will hang on to it and just allow access through an easement, through some other way. That's lawyer liability stuff and maybe tax issues, as far as valuation. Because if you gave the property away, you wouldn't be able to tax it to the developer. It'd be the land trust or whoever would be the recipient of the deed, conservation easement or whatever it might be. So
this would all be finalized at a further stage?
we could do that, or if that's a curiosity of you, I could endeavor while the transcript is being transcribed, because I think you've done some of it, right? But you haven't finished. We're having the transcript finished so that for Maggie's benefit, for your benefit, so that everybody can have a record of the last, I guess it's a couple of years now, where it's been in front of you folks. But we can endeavor to answer that question and come to a conclusion. I know John Brown was very interested in having unfettered access to that property. I know the land trust would like to and the town council actually in their decision tried to make sure that there was unfettered access by the town because of Goat Rock. I mean, there was testimony before the town council of that being a place that some of the council people hung out when they were in their teenage years. It's a big rock, it's some liability issues. You don't want people climbing up on it and then, falling off and say, who are you going to sue? Because a lawyer's going to sue somebody. So you can obviously say I'm not in the lawyer union. But we can answer those questions between now and the time that we've estimated that the transcript will be produced and the planning board solicitor will have some time to spend with it. And maybe we can close if Mr. Ryan wants to do that prior to that special meeting so that you can hear a closing argument. Maggie would have had access to the documents that are the final proof of what the findings of fact were, because the transcript speaks to the facts. You interpret them as you see fit in your decision. And then we can close, you'd have that information. And in the meantime, I can come back with the answer to your question, Carolyn, that here's the agreement that we've come to, or the framework of the agreement that you would then incorporate into a decision, assuming that you decided in favor of it. Does that answer your question, I think?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
So as I'm understanding this, you're agreeable to another meeting?
Yeah.
To do whatever needs to be done. Okay.
And before we pick that date, I've got to find out from the stenographer how long that transcript stuff's going to take.
Mr. Chairman, there's one also additional hanging item, and that is the board's prior referral to the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
You probably want to address that now as to whether or not you're going to wait for that or you're going to withdraw that request.
Okay. Board members, thoughts on the Conservation Commission?
I think,
We don't have a Conservation Commission.
we don't have one, and this is the only stage that we could ask for. So I think it's kind of dead in the water. I don't think we can.
Mr. DiOrio put it pretty concisely that we can't hold up the world until we find a Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be 30 years.
The Conservation Commission has to happen for major during the master plan stage. That's where we're at, and I don't think we can.
So you might want to make a motion to vacate the prior referral.
Okay, do we have a motion to vacate that? prior
It's looking at
referral?
me. I move that we vacate the prior referral of this master plan application to the Conservation Commission, seeing how the Conservation Commission is not currently meeting with a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Prowitz, yes.
Mandalore, yes.
Light, yes.
Shamshini, yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, a thought on the discussion meeting.
Mhm.
So Maggie, I think that's a wonderful idea. I would only like to caution that I'd really like to see that meeting focus on planning board discussion. I really don't want to hear 2 hours of recap from attorneys. Right? That's not going to sit well with me. The emphasis of that maybe it needs to be another meeting to give counselors an opportunity to close. That's fine. But the meeting at which we discuss amongst ourselves our thoughts, concerns, etc., I almost want to put it in the venue of having closed a public hearing.
Yes.
Now, I know it's not a public hearing in the formal sense, but I would really like the emphasis to be on planning board discussion to the extent that we can do that.
Right, I was assuming that's was we wanted to go.
When would it be appropriate under these conditions to close the public hearing?
Well, we don't really, it's not really.
It's not a public hearing.
It's a public informational meeting.
Yeah.
So you don't really close that.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of my conundrum.
Let me pose a question to our stenographer. How long you
Can you type
require?
and talk at this?
Well, I finished the first hearing date. I don't have the dates with me, but that was sent to Mr. Griffin's office.
Okay.
I'm working on 2 more dates. I believe 2022, I think, date, and 2000, maybe both 2022, and there are about 200 pages left. So one is done, which was 85 pages that was sent out 2 days ago.
Okay.
And the other 2 will probably be 3 weeks.
Oh, that's soon. Okay.
Well, it's usually 2 weeks per job. And depending, so the second one is halfway done. So I'm thinking about 3 more weeks from now, The other two will be.
So if we said a month, to give you a little bit of room to do what you have to do, that's good. Is it good with you?
I don't
Attorney Fraser?
think that it should be on the April planning board agenda because that is
No, I'm
when,
thinking a special meeting.
okay,
to do that.
okay. I'm just trying to balance because Brushy Brook is on in April,
Let Meredith
so.
get done what she has to do. We look the things over, then we get together and discuss it and then make a decision. I'm getting the evil eye from it.
No, well, in terms of order of operations, if she's done with the transcripts in 3 weeks and they're 285 pages,
We're gonna need time. to-
we need time to read
Right,
those
right.
and review those. So I don't think we should schedule a meeting a week later.
Oh, no, I wasn't
Right.
considering
Okay.
scheduling a meeting, just giving her time to.
And also, I feel like maybe it makes sense to hear the closing statements from the attorneys before our discussion as well. I don't think it
Yes.
makes sense to have our discussion and then have the attorneys focus on what we discussed
Yeah,
on
no.
and try to rebut all that.
Right, absolutely.
So are you looking more for like 3 meetings where you have the closing, you have your discussion, and then you have your decision meeting? Is that kind
What was
of?
the third thing?
So it's the presentation by the attorneys, your discussion, and then after your discussion, as Maggie said, you might at that point in time feel comfortable making a decision, you might not. And then the third would be the decision if you were inclined to have it on a separate date from the discussion.
Yes, I like that layout.
And it was my interpretation that you were going to have the transcripts from Maggie prior to you closing? Is that? what you
Yes,
were planning
yeah.
on doing?
Well, Maggie is offered to prepare some proposed framework of finding of facts. The best place to find that information is in the transcript. And you're right, 285 pages of this type of stuff is a little dry.
Take a couple hours to read that.
Couple hours, yeah, a couple of days between cups of coffee.
Do you use big fonts?
Mm.
Is there, I don't know if this is something that, because I'm a newer member, I'm not really used to, but having to pick through, I have 5 copies of the plans and 6 books and one of the sections of one of the books is double printed. Like what's the latest version of everything that's applicable to what is here?
Well, once we get the transcripts, we can look those over and anything that you don't have or don't have reference to.
Right.
Somebody
That's what I
here
would
or
just be
or
looking
Holly
for
has
is
got
like
anything that,
the plans from July or
it's
this
all
section
available.
from here, whether you provide it again or. we
You'd
don't.
call me Cecil. That's what you would do.
That's what I would do?
Yes.
And you give me the whole-
Kit and caboodle, yes.
So let me just jump in for a sec. Because this is a very long and complicated matter, I am intending to append to your final decision exhibits. And one exhibit is going to be the list of the applicant's exhibits. And another one will be a list of objector exhibits that Mr. Ryan has presented. And then there will be a third one that's letters from the public will all be, and we're going to reference them that, the planning board received a letter from Mr. and Mrs. Smith at such and such a street, whatever, so that it's a compilation of the full record. And I will also probably reference where you can find that information on the things that Talia has posted on the town's website. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith's letter was posted on July 1, 2022. You can look at that agenda, the documents associated with that agenda. So I'm just trying to provide you with a little bit of a roadmap, and I'll try to get that to you in advance.
Luckily, I've started that process a little bit.
Yay.
So it's going to probably, it's a process that I'll have to go through once and then review again probably to make sure that I have everything and then maybe even a second go around because there's a lot of information, but
I've kind of done it myself as
Yeah.
well, but I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be looking at the wrong document.
understood. Okay,
So we talking like April?
Next year?
What are we talking?
April, no, right?
For the closing argument meeting.
So I know that Maggie suggested earlier if you wanted to have like a special meeting separate from your regular planning board meeting. If that's is that something that you'd be interested in doing? Yes or no? I see Carolyn's face is
See
suggesting
my
no.
face, because once that starts, and
Yeah.
it's already started.
Yeah,
We got March
Carolyn,
15th.
Carolyn's face is saying no. Al is difficult to read.
I'll
I
make
can't.
that easy, no.
Yeah, okay.
So I thought the idea of the special meeting for the planning board's internal discussion, that's a great idea. I'm okay with that.
Okay,
That'd
okay,
be
so,
relatively short, okay? Because we have control, but all the closing stuff, that should be regular meeting stuff.
okay,
That would be
okay.
my thought.
So for that, I would say May, because as I expressed previously, Brushy Brook will be on in April, and I don't like to commingle big projects with other big projects. I will be away in the middle of April, so it's not as though we could have like a special meeting at that point in time because I would not be afoot. So I think probably maybe the May meeting for closing and then a mid-May workshop discussion type engagement. And then, depending upon how you feel at that point in time, if you feel prepared to make your motion at that point, or if you'd want to have the separate date, that would probably end up being likely in June at some point, give or take.
What do you think?
I think that we can hash the dates out a little bit better once we know when we have the transcripts and once we've been able to look at all the material and look at it again and look at it a third time and put it into binders and whatever. But I think the most important thing is that you continue the decision at least to a date certain, because obviously you don't want the clock to run out while you're trying to make a determination.
Mr. Craven, you're willing to extend the date for decision, are you not?
Yes.
Thank you.
Attorney Ryan, are you agreeable to everything that's been said here?
I'm available on May 3rd, and the rest of the schedule seems fine.
Okay, thank you. No, should we just suspend this?
You're going to continue it to a date certain?
We're gonna make a motion to continue the public informational meeting to May 3rd, 2022. And continue the decision deadline to, I'm just making this up, May 31st, 2023. I think I said May 3rd, 2022. Correct myself. Continuing the public informational meeting to May 3rd, 2023, and the decision deadline to May 31st, 2023.
Second. Okay, Prowitz, yes.
Below, yes.
Light, yes.
Shamshini, yes.
Yorio, yes.
Let's continue to May.
May 3rd.
And that's for oral argument, for closing
Closing arguments.
arguments
May
by
3rd.
the attorneys. And then, Mr. Chairman, did you want to have the planner send a request to the tax assessor on that question?
Yeah, the more information we've got, the better it'll
Yeah.
be for everybody.
I think we'll resolve that once and for all.
Mr. Chairman, could both parties be provided copies of whatever the answer is from the
course.
tax assessor?
You're entitled to
Sure.
that.
Thanks.
We can do that. Okay. I think Meredith can take a break now.
Yeah.
They have the next application too.
Yes. Yeah, you can stay.
She needs a break though?
You need a break? Give your fingers a rest, 5-minute walk around the room or something? Or?
Not for me. I'm not sure what Mr. Ryan's going to do. Yeah.
What a
Are we-
trooper.
Are we going to argue the Atlantic issue?
I think that's what they're talking about now, Paul.
Okay, because I need to go get my Atlantic file, so
Oh, well, then maybe you should.
I'm
take-
on Skunk Hill right now.
Yeah. Why don't you get the file and Meredith, take a break?
Yeah, let's recess for 5 minutes.
Recess makes me want to run outside and play junk rope.
Come back.
Don't come,
Jump
get
rope.
lost.
Climb on the monkey bars.
Back on track.
I get the impression you were one of the ones that swing so high, the legs come out of the ground.
Thanks, yeah, like
It's my,
Yeah.
I'll find something that's been superseded.
That's probably a little bit rude.
Not have part of it.
My feeling is we want that there's not going to be any revenue for the town. That's what I want to know. You know, because maybe they were looking at $500,000 a year, but if they're losing,
The
now it's not.
The mics are still hot.
Yeah. You never know. All right, my husband's been away for 3 weeks. Business. He's coming home tomorrow. I want to be home right now.
I bet. I'm going to North Carolina for work tomorrow.
He's in Charlotte.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, yeah.
That's funny. I'm
Yeah.
going to, like,
When is your
the
thing? Is it-
Durham
oh, it's
area.
tomorrow.
Durham, North.
I didn't sign up
How
for
long
it.
you
It's too
gonna be there
expensive. I was
today?
like, nah, I'm not signing up for that.
Hopefully it
I'm
doesn't
going to
snow
some
on
free
Friday
sailings.
night. So I get back, I'm trying to get back on Friday night late.
Yes, no, I am
Do
refreshed.
you have a good turnout for it, you know?
Hopefully the weather cooperates. I don't get stuck.
Where is it gonna be?
What he was hoping.
It's virtual.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so tired of this.
Told him I
God, I just had to do one today. It was just an.
understand if he had to take another
I'm
day.
writing decisions. I was like, I don't think I got that one done.
That's one more day, really.
Playing golf.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you know what, it's
It's
like
like
somebody in
mixing
the
the business
DOA,
and
and
pleasure.
like, this is the thing, shtick or whatever.
It's nice and warm down there.
I know.
Spring
Like,
lights
so
into
that
it.
kind of thing. I get the credit, now credit comes in.
Run it in the back.
So, I also was.
Oh,
Yeah, that's exhausting.
I missed where they, what were they saying about the parking situation with that cemetery proposal?
Where
Was
are
there-
people, like, where are people?
Yeah, what was their
Just parking lot.
response? You said just along
I
that.
think they just took the data.
Yeah,
Oh,
we'll come
okay.
up and we'll come back with an answer.
Got it. I couldn't remember if there was a response. I was like, that's a really good, I'm glad you raised it. I didn't even look at it. Think about that.
Laughs on their bill. Terrible human being. I know that myself.
I
The mics
didn't
are
know
there.
that cemeteries were a thing. I didn't know it was a business.
There
That's-
must
I
be
was-
all kinds of regulations that we gotta do to.
Yeah, you have to maintain it to a certain standard, like in perpetuity. But as a business model, I mean, it just fills up. So then you stop making money after that. So at some point you max out, right?
Yeah. So you put 12 inches of topsoil and you start doing it again. I need to know.
Yeah.
What flavor do you recommend?
I'm going with Poland Springs.
Oh,
Yes, yeah.
Oh, so you're not drinking hand sanitizer.
5 on there, yeah. Oh my God.
Very curious. New cemetery in town.
I hope they know their business.
Is that a first for Al? Having a cemetery?
Good question.
He's been doing
Whatever
this
it
for a
comes
long
out to,
time.
I guess that would-
Huh?
What's the last new cemetery in this state that's been?
I think it's the one behind the Scout House is the newest one in town. I'm not sure though.
Where's that?
Right over here behind Dunkin' Donuts. One thing about it, the neighbors are quiet.
That's what I was gonna say. They all get along.
They're dying to get in there. Huh?
Trash pickup is routine.
Yeah.
You know, the noise.
What's funny is at one point she was talking about decibels and all, and then the fan was making noise.
Oh my God, I
Like,
know.
Twice it did
There's your
that.
decibels. But just like the other, there's so many notes and so much time to get this recount.
It all gets confusing after a while.
Yeah.
I thought we were getting close to the final meetings, and now we have 3 more.
If 3
It
more
makes-
is it,
It
then
makes sense, but it's still like, oh.
Yeah.
And in April, we have Brushy Brook, right?
Yep.
Great. Excuse me.
So if we can get rid of those 2 projects, I don't see Brushy Brook in time in the near future.
That's fine. It's been going on for 14 years. It's another 14.
So,
It grinds my gears when we ask questions. The Brushy Brook people, and we don't get a direct answer. Either on a bush and then they do something completely different and stuff.
It's fuzzy. It's a fuzzy project because I feel like there should be definitive lines about what's what over there. It's just not.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then you're not an expert in something and
There's a lot of these experts that
Everyone gets to see how young I actually am.
yeah.
I have coworkers who like started working during the pandemic. And so they really haven't seen me without my mask on.
Yeah.
One of them saw me when I was driving away in my car to go home. She was like, I cannot believe how young you are. I am.
Good for you.
I think we're about ready.
You get the gavel.
Gavel it.
We could get everybody back in
People
order,
just
please.
Assume something fell. You have to like multiple.
Dim the lights.
Mr. Chairman,
Dim all
Atlantic
the
Solar.
lights.
Yes.
I gotta I've issued a notice of recusal. I did work on this project, although I'm not associated in any form with the project anymore.
Okay. I believe this is, well, no, we got a discussion after that, so.
Yeah.
If you'd like, okay.
Ooh, there's a-
Okay. Next order of business. Object and request master plan public informational meeting. Major land development project, Atlantic Solar, lot 7, lot 31, lot 10, lot 87, lot 11, lot 35, 0 Main Street, Atlantic Solar applicant.
He goes first.
Okay. Attorney Ryan.
yes, Mr. Chairman. I think I can assist procedurally the board a little bit in that the document I filed was a motion to dismiss. And even though I faced that as an applicant's attorney a few times, I think the more appropriate designation of what I filed is really a motion to deny. And simply stated that when you get to the point of making your findings of fact on this application, I argue that you're going to have to apply the April 19th, 2021 ordinance as the ordinance that should be applied and not the 2019 ordinance. So I'm going to make my argument on that basis. Not that the thing gets totally dismissed tonight, but what my position is vis-a-vis which town ordinance would apply. The solicitor today said something which is just came up today, that the neighbors did not appeal the certificate of completeness issued by the planner in July of 2021. The statute really doesn't say whether a neighbor can appeal or not. But in the matters I've had at DEM and CRMC, the administrative law judges have held that neighbors cannot appeal certificates of completeness, and only the applicant can. The applicant can appeal a denial by an administrative officer by saying, I don't think I have to comply with A through Z. I think I only have to comply with A through N. And then that administrative body, in this case, you, says, okay, we only think you have to do A through N. We disagree with the planner, and therefore the application should have been certified as complete. So neighbors really don't have standing to appeal certificates of completeness in and of themselves. And then getting to my position on which ordinance should apply. The town council in 2019 on this particular zoning amendment somehow put in a clause that said, no matter when this comes up to bat, the ordinance in effect as of tonight will be applied whenever, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. The principal problem with that is that violates the state statutes. The state statutes specifically give these timeframes, and town councils cannot, just because they feel like it, alter state law on a particular issue. So what happened in this case? Well, in this case, they changed the zone for the property known as the Atlantic Project. In doing so, they said, well, this ordinance will apply in perpetuity forever. In between that time and April 19th, not only was there one master ordinance change on solar, but the second one on April 19th, 2021, actually barred commercial solar from any property in the town of Hopkinton. The applicant in Atlantic filed their application on the 20th of April, the day after, and the application was deemed not substantially complete by the planner. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the applicant does have a right to appeal determination of incompleteness, whereas I don't. And they did not appeal the determination of found to be incomplete. In July, the planner then certified it as complete. And that would trigger vesting under the statute. Now, not only had one ordinance change been made, but two ordinances had been, master ordinances have been passed on commercial solar. By the time the application had been certified as complete by the planner. So the application for master plan can proceed, but my argument is that when you make your findings of fact, that it has to conform to the ordinance, the zoning ordinance of the town of Hopkinton, that you should apply the April 19th, 2021 ordinance, which was passed before the application was certified as complete. And that's my position.
Thank you. Attorney Craven.
I'll shock you. I disagree. The 2016 solar ordinance is not only the one that was legally in effect, but now because this matter has gone to the Superior Court and there were challenges made by the objectors, it has become the law of the case because there was a motion filed to object, and then Atlantic, myself, filed a motion for summary judgment, and the objectors didn't file an objection or even appear. Therefore, the Superior Court of the state of Rhode Island ruled that the appeal was dismissed. And I think that's the law of the case. But your solicitor asked both of us to address some questions tonight in reference to this motion to dismiss hearing. And specifically, the first question was, under what authority, statutory or otherwise, could a planning board dismiss a case without reaching the merits? And my answer is there is no such authority. The board has only three options. The planning board shall, within 90 days of certification of completeness of the master plan application, approve with changes in condition or in changes of conditions, or deny the application under the provisions of Rhode Island General Law 4523, 63, and 4523, 40, subsection E. And that's also ensconced in your zoning ordinance. So there is no authority for you folks to do this right now. You haven't reached the merits of the case. Bless you. In the second question that your solicitor presented is, in the present case, the planner issued a certificate of completeness, which was not appealed. What impact does this have on any general authority that a planning board might have to dismiss a matter without reaching the merits? Again, it has no impact on it. A decision by the town planner or administrative officer can be appealed to the zoning board of appeals. Must be done within 20 days, however, of that decision. That wasn't done. No appeal was taken. So once a plan is certified as complete by the administrative officer, there's a review by a technical review committee, if established, and then the local planning board, along with the public informational meetings, a decision must be made by the planning board within 90 days from that completeness certification, unless otherwise extended by the parties. And we've done that here many times, but not for this issue. So I believe that the appropriate reaction is, one, deny the motion, or two, it isn't right to deny the motion. And I'm sure your solicitor will have some comments to you as well, for you as well, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
I have no general comments, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, I have no questions. Anyone on the board?
Well, Maggie, you posed the same two questions to Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Do you have any additional comments for us, Mr. Ryan?
I can jump in. So when Maggie sent those questions to Mr. Ryan and Mr. Craven, we both received a response from Mr. Ryan with an accompanying attachment. I didn't have the opportunity to run it off in time for this meeting. But I'm not sure how you plan on dispensing with this, if you plan on voting on it this evening, but if this is going to be continued to a future meeting, I can make sure that I have those copies of the document that he provided for you at that point in time. But if you do want to just touch on them now, I just wanted to give the board some background, Mr. Ryan.
If you'd like to contribute, I'd like to hear. If not, we could hold off on my specific question. Okay.
Take that as a no.
I don't think he realizes that you're talking to him.
The question is addressed to you, Mr. Ryan.
The matter that I sent to the planning board was a matter that where I was the applicant in Little Compton. And the opponent brought a motion to dismiss before the zoning board in Little Compton. It was granted. And I appealed to the Superior Court, and the Superior Court said that basically it went to the timeliness issue, that my clients who had a prior attorney, seems like this comes up often for me because it came up in this case in Superior Court. My predecessor attorney had missed a deadline. So one thing I'd respectfully ask, because I got this this morning, I sent the case, but then I've had no time to work on it because I've been in a couple of different court hearings, one involving the Narragansett zoning board in Washington County. So I didn't really have a chance to do a memo or anything. And I just respectfully ask that the board review that case, which I was on the losing end of. I was on Mr. Craven's position. And also, if you want just a brief memo, we can provide that. And since it's attorney night on May 3rd, rather than the board considering a whole bunch of other things, it might be good to make the decision on Atlantic the same time that we're making the oral arguments on Skunk Hill. But you'll have the material to just make a decision on Atlantic at that time and review the case and some other cases I can put together that were impactful on Judge Kern's decision.
Thank you.
My question is, the timeline Attorney Craven laid out. Do we agree with that? Is that the official timeline from the state? It wasn't opposed within 20 days, so it's a done deal.
Are you talking about an appeal of the certificate of completion
No,
or the appeal to the
their-
Superior Court? I'm a little
their
confused.
opportunity to appeal.
Right. So the question I posed to the parties was, because in this case, there is a certificate of completeness that was issued. And so what I asked them was what impact it has on the planning board's, because it was not appealed, what impact does that have on the planning board's ability to decide the case now when it has not been appealed? You heard Mr. Craven's response. Mr. Ryan really hasn't addressed that, I don't think, entirely. And I think he's asking you for some additional time to address that question. And then the first question I asked was, what is the general jurisdiction of the planning board to even dismiss a case at all? Mr. Craven addressed that. And Mr. Ryan, I may have addressed that in his papers, but there's been several filings. I'd have to go back and look.
So it's best for us to continue this discussion, huh?
That's up to you folks to decide.
Well, if the timeline has run out on this, are we just spinning our wheels? Continuing and pushing it down the road? That's the thing. Just a second.
I believe the project is still active and
The project is active, but the
The
motion to
application-
dismiss is what we're discussing.
So let me just jump in for a second. Mr. Ryan converted his prior pleadings this evening. And rather than a motion to dismiss, he said he wanted you to decide a motion to deny, as I understand it. Is that correct, Mr. Ryan?
Yes, that's correct. So it
So-
allows the board to proceed and just, you're gonna make an issue on which zoning ordinance applied as part of your findings of fact on your decision, rather than trying to dismiss the case in advance of the, in one way, Mr. Craven's correct in that he technically, and I should have been allowed in Little Compton to make a record. And then you make a decision as to which ordinance you believe applied.
So basically, based on what Attorney Ryan just said and what Attorney Craven has said, we don't have to act on this objector. No one is asking us to act on this objector request. We can simply move on.
It feels like.
But most likely when we render a decision at some point, we'll have to recognize which one of those were.
Exactly.
Which ordinance is applicable.
Okay, we have a hand in
And
the audience.
just one more thing before we do that. Talking about, keeping our records and whatnot. Attorney Hogan wrote a memo to us dated August 1st, 2022 that speaks to that issue. You got it. About which ordinance, it basically provides the background for why we're even being asked this question and why it might be an issue. And so I would say my inclination is to move on beyond the objector request, not act on it, but that the board should review that memo prior to our discussion of the project and what ordinance we want to call out in the findings of fact. Because I think we have enough information about that to be able to make a decision. I don't think we need new evidence. My personal opinion.
Any other board members before we hear from Mr. Moffett?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So my question is an agreement on what the vesting mechanism is for this? Because everything I've read is the vesting mechanism is the submission of the master plan application. There's nothing in there that says a submission of a zoning amendment application vests the project. So that's kind of my question. We spent many, many months putting this ordinance together. And if you're saying the submission of the master plan application is what vests the project, then I think Mr. Ryan is correct with the April 21 solar ordinance. I would also ask for some examples of where a application that is submitted for a zoning amendment application vests a project. In that memo that is written there, it just says development projects. It doesn't say zoning amendment applications. It says development applications. And there's a big difference because one gives you the ability to, or the right to have that right or that use, right? And the other one is an application for that actual use to be looked at, to be analyzed by the planning board, to be judged on its merits. So I think there is a complete distinction between both of those. So I would just like some clarification, maybe through the planning board, if they could, find that out, because I think it would enlighten us. There's a big difference in kind of, I would think if the zoning amendment application locked them into it, or even an ordinance, a zone change ordinance would create this, in my opinion, special thing, going above the state, because the laws it doesn't say this, you know what I mean? So I really think, to Mr. Ryan's comments, that maybe the previous town council might have exceeded their authority, So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Just to respond to that really quickly, I think that what I suggested just a minute ago is if we kind of follow the same structure that we followed with the Skunk Hill project, and we have a meeting where we discuss the complexities and components of the Atlantic solar case among planning board members, that this was one of the items that we would discuss, because it probably needs some interpretation and discussion, and it would bear on what we do find in those findings of fact. And then just to speak specifically, Steve, to what you said, I agree, like with the intention of a zoning ordinance versus or the, the specific intention of a zoning ordinance. in the zone change. The problem that I think Maggie highlighted in her memo is really ambiguous language used by the previous town council. And while I would love to adhere to the intention of the zoning ordinance, the language is really rough.
Sure, but
Really
I would, you know,
hard to
and I'm sure Maggie's on it, but I would like to make sure that, I mean, because I don't want to set a precedent here in town, right? That town councils are going to go out and do whatever they want, and then we can have these rights forever, right? And then maybe 20 years from now, oh, I'm going to go buy the ordinance back in 2009, and I'm going to dump all this stuff here. Or I'm going to do all that because I can. I just don't think it's something that we should continue to do. So
Yeah.
I would like, though, some examples of where a zoning amendment, you know, or an ordinance actually that's a project. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
it's just so open-ended.
I think her memo
It's
suggests-
incredible, but in the memo too, it goes through saying, and there's a lot of examples on development application, and you have to look at the development application. When was that submitted? And then at the end, it's, oh, but the ordinance is going to dictate that. I'm confused. That's all. I just think, you know, we worked long and hard on this ordinance. It's kind of funny. It was submitted the day after, maybe kind of squeaking in. I don't know, but I did see the letter, and Jim kind of harshly said, this isn't even close to complete. You know, and if you need some help doing it, maybe I can help you, but it's not going to fly. So that's kind of a history of it. Thank you very much.
I'm wondering if it's our place to try and interpret what the Superior Court said and what the actual law is. That's the thing.
The Superior Court thing is completely different. That was an appeal of the zone change. This is different. This is a development project.
Okay.
And this is a master plan application. They're two different things.
Okay, thank you.
You know, so that's a completely different case. Whether the merits on that are, they're just different.
I disagree.
Understood.
Do you want
It
to
is-
clarify
it is,
that?
and
If you read the town council's decision on the zone change, it is, first of all, I want to clarify this. The zone change, I just used that expression. This is not a permanent change to the zone. It's a permission to do something, solar project, for the life of 30 years. And then it reverts back automatically when it has to be decommissioned. So that usually a zone change carries with it permanency on the use of the land. This is not a permanent change. So that's one of the, that even impacts the taxation of the property. How can you tax it as a permanent use when it's not, and it's specifically not by the town council's decision? But the second thing was, when you say compare zone changes to applications for, a plan that you want to implement, that decision by the town council doesn't apply to factually, the findings of fact. It applies to one specific project. It is de facto part of the process. You couldn't apply here unless you had the zoning to do it. Otherwise, we'd be wasting your time. That was the application that would vest what the rules were, what zoning ordinance for solar was in effect at the time that this project vested as being complete and would carry on throughout. Otherwise, we would go through the town council process, and then we came to you, they changed the zone. Or they changed the zoning ordinance for solar. That wouldn't make any sense at all, especially if it was just a general, request, or we should be able to do solar in this town. That would be different. This was solar for this specific project, for this specific use, with all the peculiarities that were findings of fact in that town council decision. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
I had a
Again, I
question.
want to remind you, 5 minutes, please.
Eric Bibler, Woodville Road. I had a question similar to Steve Moffat's, but I just want to bring something else up. I'm not an attorney, but this question of automatic revision has come up in numerous prior hearings. It's absolutely false. There is no such thing as automatic reversion of a zone. The Rhode Island Supreme Court has issued a ruling saying that you cannot have a property that automatically reverts. It's in the Rhode Island Handbook of Zoning and whatever, I don't know. The town solicitor in 2019 wrote a memo to the town council. It was a private memo, but he wrote a memo to the town council informing them that they really couldn't say that anymore because no zone can be changed without going through the process of having public hearings and, notifying abutters and all of that stuff. So there is no such thing as standing here today and stipulating that something automatically reverts 30 years from now. That's been decided by the Rhode Island Supreme Court, okay? And this has come up several times. So this idea that it's temporary because it's only 30 years, you should check that, but I don't think it's that relevant. The question I have is this idea, this came up in the Skunk Hill case, and in the case of Skunk Hill, the applicant submitted his application for master plan application in a form that was deemed to be substantially complete on April 9th, the afternoon of mere hours before the town council changed the zoning ordinance. And the planning solicitor issued an advice to you in the form of a memo that said that the test for zoning was a state law that said that an application for land development had to be submitted in the town of Hopkinton. That's the way we interpret it here, in a form that's substantially complete. And that's what constitutes vesting. So Skunk Hill was vested in an earlier ordinance by virtue of that, by mere hours. Now, this application came in a day late. It was certified incomplete before it was certified complete. But the point is, the test is a state law. And the state law is the mechanism, as I understand it from these prior memos, the state law is the mechanism that prevents a former town council from binding all future town councils to some action that it takes, right? So a future town council has the right to change ordinances that past town councils have passed. Now, I understand that there was.
Let me interrupt you for a second.
Can I just
Isn't
finish
this
my
something-
thought? Because it's public comment and I'm not really a witness and can I please
Hang on a minute.
finish my
Isn't this
thought?
something that Mr. Ryan should be arguing?
This is my question, okay? I think,
I haven't heard a question.
well, I wanted to address automatic reversion, Ron, and I'm trying to tell you what you've already heard on Skunk Hill. And my question is, how is this, can I just get to my point, Ron? How is this consistent with the treatment of Skunk Hill? And the other thing is, I think the planning board needs to ask the question, how can a town council in 2019 write a rule for vesting? That's effectively what they did. They wrote in their ordinance that this project was going to be vested under the 2016 ordinance. How do they write a rule under a town ordinance that has more authority and supersedes the state law that provides the test? Because I don't think, and this is a question for your solicitor to answer for you, I don't think there's any case law that says that a town council can write its own rule for vesting that flies in the face of the state test. So that's where I'm lost on the consistency of these memos. How does the Hopkinton Town Council of 2019 enact this in all perpetuity and get past the state law?
Sounds like a town council question.
It goes to the question of what is the applicable ordinance when you make your findings. It goes to the question of your findings. That's going to be the key question here. So I'm trying to figure out how you can make your finding that the correct ordinance is the 2016 ordinance when that's actually contradicted by the state law investing. That's my question.
So is that something that Steve Moffett spoke to?
Steve Moffett put it a little differently, but I'm putting it in the sense of, I don't understand whatever the town council, he mentioned that it wasn't clear in his mind as a counselor, who I think is relatively well-informed, it wasn't clear to him that the town council in 2019 had the authority She asked me a question, Ron. I'm answering the question. I already went back to sit down, okay? Trying to be cooperative to Carolyn here. She asked me a question and the answer is that my question is, how does the town council have the authority to make a vesting rule that supersedes the state law? And how can you make your determination on the basis of that? That's my question.
So I don't think the planning board has any authority to answer that question or explore that question. I think it really
That's a
would
town
be,
council thing. That's a town
it would
council thing.
be a planning board liaison town council member satisfying that. I don't think it.
I think you're obligated to make a finding of fact as to which ordinance applies.
Are we?
That's what your subdivision regulations
It's also
say.
you're asking us to make a decision on something that two town councils
No.
made a decision on.
I
It's
don't-
not our
I
responsibility.
Well,
I
I'm-
legally don't think that the town council would respond to an inquiry of that nature from the planning board.
I'm asking that you make this a question for your planning solicitor. How, when you make your determination of whether or not this conforms to the Hopkinton ordinance, which is one of the findings that you have to make, I think it's the second one, that you pose the question as to how do you resolve, basically, there's a conflict between the state law and the town council's action of 2019. And I think the question is for your solicitor to advise you, how do you resolve that conflict? It's clearly a conflict. And you have to resolve it and you're going to need some help
I
and
think
not from
that's
me.
Part
because I'm
of
not a
the
lawyer.
Paul Ryan discussion, not something that. Can we charge you with investigating this, Megan?
She
Or does
already
it-
wrote a whole memo on it.
There's
That's
a-
what we're
there's a
talking about.
memo on it From
We're
August?
we're spinning our wheels
All
here.
right.
This is.
I think we're
it's
just
there.
reiterating that we need to go back
Just
and
have that
study.
We've already
Special
agreed that-
meeting,
We need
maybe we
people-
can.
The attorneys are gonna get
combine the
together with us
Skunk Hill thing with
in May.
this.
May 3rd.
May 3rd for
How many times do we have to beat this
comments,
dead horse?
31st for decision deadline. That's what you set for Skunk Hill.
And it's gonna be buried in the cemetery.
Okay, so can we'll
Yes.
move on to future meeting planning for this? Are there any other questions we have to tackle tonight?
Might it be a good idea if when we have our special Skunk Hill meeting, that we have a special Atlantic, like,
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm getting at.
yep. Let's follow. the
Hopefully
same.
combine the two possibly.
So does the date of May 3rd
3rd,
that we were just
exactly.
talking about for Skunk Hill for final statements from the attorneys, does that work for Atlantic Solar as well?
Well, yes, but we still have other stuff we got to present to you
Oh, you
on
do?
Atlantic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not,
Today or in the future?
Today.
not today.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't posted, my notice purposes for today.
All right.
But we still have another stage we go through, where we present the experts and do the same stuff that we did on Skunk Hill. So in
Okay.
planning for this, just so it helps me to think when I get confused, that maybe you folks are as well, that you can't confuse this issue we just argued with what happens with Skunk Hill. There's going to be, Skunk Hill has already had its life and it's been presented and it's going to be transcribed. And then you're right to make the discussion, closing arguments and then decision. Atlantic has got a whole nother life that hasn't been lived yet before we get to the point where we answer this question.
All right, so, but we're good with continuing Atlantic to May 3rd, but you're just going to do a presentation of more stuff, or do you want a different date?
I'm not sure that that's a good day to do it, but we do need to postpone it for purposes of preserving the right for the council to not have the law say that you've made a decision by your failing to make a decision one way or the other. So we'll pick a date for that makes sense. And I don't know, Talia has a
June planning board meeting would be the 7th.
June 7th. Yeah, we could do that.
So we've got the two dates currently right now. We obviously continued this public informational meeting to today, and we extended the decision deadline to March 8th. So we're going to extend the public informational meeting to June 7th, 2023. This, I'm making a motion now. And we'll extend the review of the application until June
You've been doing a week
15th.
later,
It'd be
15th,
June 14th.
2023,
June 14th, I guess.
14th, 2023.
So Mr. Craven, at the June meeting, then you're planning to proceed on the merits of the application. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll be presenting, I'll be bringing the engineer in and doing the whole, presentation.
I'll second Emily's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Prowitz, yes.
Below, yes.
But yes.
Shamshinia, yes.
Wales, yes.
Motion carries. Okay, thank you. The next
Wow.
item on the agenda.
Thank you for your attention tonight. You almost ran up against the deadline.
We're getting very close, dangerously close. So this goes along with the next item, the Atlantic Solar Public Informational Hearing, Major Land Development Project. That's what we decided on for everything, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Lena's report.
no, well, we got. Yeah, okay.
Solicitors report.
Does Al have to come back in?
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
There it is.
Good night, Mr. Craven.
I don't know how it happened, but I lost a piece of.
Nobody
paper. I
offers
haven't
to
moved from
carry your
this
bag
spot.
or anything, huh?
Do you want this?
Yeah, I think so. I don't- How could I lose it? I haven't moved,
The agenda?
I haven't moved from this spot. Yep. Oh, here we go. Never mind, I got it.
Okay.
Okay, solicitors report says none. Planners report.
3 things. 1, the planning board comments on housing working group publication from November 10th, 2022. We drafted and discussed by the planning board at the April meeting prior to submission to the town council for their review and potential approval. So in relation to that, I would say, and this is not something that you can respond to because it wasn't noticed, but I received a communication earlier today that I believe a suite of housing bills will be introduced tomorrow. So while I think it would not be a bad idea to start voicing your opinions, I think it might be more appropriate to maybe start reviewing specific legislation as it comes down the pike, if that's something that that the board feels is necessary to do. So I don't know if you necessarily want to switch gears in relation to that issue. But again, this is not something that was noticed on the agenda. I found out today that the suite of legislation is coming out tomorrow. So that's something that we can probably discuss as what that legislation entails is announced. The second item is the comprehensive plan 5-year update workshop is set for March 15th at 7 p.m. The third item is please complete the hazard mitigation plan survey. It is on the town website. It can be completed by residents, property owners, local employees, local students, if you'd like. If you have any questions about completing the hazard mitigation plan survey, you can contact the planning department. It is a completely anonymous survey. You don't even have to answer all of the questions if you think that some of them don't apply to you. Ultimately, the most important thing that you can do is just spend 5 minutes and respond to the survey because it helps the town prepare for responding to natural disasters. How we handle and respond to hazards. So if you have an intersection near where you live that always floods during a rainstorm, and you want to tell the town about it, that is your forum. Go nuts. So that is my request. Please take the hazard mitigation plan survey. Thank you.
Thank you. Correspondence and updates.
Letters received.
We're good with that?
Yep,
I'm
you just
good
have to
with
say
that.
that you've received them.
Public forum, we have no public. The date of the next regular meeting is April 5th, 2023. Have a
Motion to
for
adjourn.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Prowitz, yes.
Mandela, yes.
Like, yes.
Machine, yes.
Yes. Thank you.